Welcome to the City of Merritt regular meeting of Council held Tuesday, July 20th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And this is the first time we've had any public in the building, so yay. It's not mandated to wear masks, but especially if you have been double vaccinated, but I prefer to wear it with people coming and going. This is new for us. So welcome. And do we have to live stream this as well? Do we have people online as well, Greg, or open to individuals being online?
Yes, Your Worship. So in common with all of our meetings for, well, the last, I want to say the last 8 months, but really it's the last 10 years, all of our meetings are webcast, of course. But now we have people in the public gallery again for the first time, which is very cool. And I'm trying to turn off these speakers. But yes, we are webcasting.
Thank you. So I'd like to call this to order. And public input is going to be the most difficult to handle at this point. So we're limiting it to 1 minute each. I know it's not very long, but we've got a group of 6 more to come in, and I don't know since that last announcement. So I will start by calling Steve Hagen. And state your name and address, please.
My name's Steve Hagen. My business is at 1937 Colchena, and for about the last year or so I've been living at 1576 River. You've all had a chance to read my letters about the state of the cannabis business, etc. And so I'm not going to touch on any of that. What I'd really like to touch on today is the fact that when I was looking for a location in June of 2018, I was told no uncertain terms could I locate down by the daycare, which was then planned to be moved. The location in June, the location which was planned to be moved, I believe the wheels were put in motion in that on 2015, and the development application was received in 2018. And here we are in 2021, and there's a fence around the property and a vacant lot. And I would ask that you apply the zoning laws fairly. We wanted to purchase a building down there because we felt that when the daycare moved, which we knew at some point it likely would, we'd have a buffer of 150 meters from that daycare. We'd have our store's 150 meter buffer, and we would have had an extremely good buffer on Colchena Avenue. We know that there would have been 3 other licenses, and in fact there have been 5 other applicants since then, I believe. But that daycare still hasn't even broken ground. And it's my belief, and I know that city staff told me at the November 16th, 2018 meeting that daycare would not be considered open until it had a final occupancy permit and that daycare was actually in operation.
Can I interrupt for a sec? Is this in regards to the application at the Adelphi Hotel?
Yes, it is.
That's what we're talking about now.
Yes, that is the application I'm talking about. And the Adelphi Hotel is within 65 meters of the Family Place Daycare and the Merritt Youth and Family Services. And it's my belief that we should be applying the law fairly. And we were denied, even though the development application was approved, we were denied relocating on that part of the block, and I don't feel that they should be anyone should be allowed to open a cannabis store there until such a time as that daycare opens its doors. I also believe that our council and mayor should look at the spacing that we have for these stores. Most other communities are increasing their spaces to come more in line with the provincial regulations on alcohol. And a beer store cannot be located within 1 kilometer of another beer store. Yet, for some reason, we only require 10% of the space for a cannabis store. And to me, it doesn't seem like the rules are being applied fairly. I'm not going to hash out competition and all that. I know that's already been considered. But I believe that you guys should be, at the very least, asking for a variance for this application. I'd like to thank you, Your Worship, for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you.
Do you want me to shut that off for you?
No, if you could leave that on, thanks.
Just so you know as well, so the Bloomfield station are currently on the video call, just in case you want to know.
Okay, they're not on my list. Thank you very much. Wes Cash. Name and address for the record, please.
Wes Cash, business Desert Divas and Dons, located at 2101 Quilchena Avenue, 2A. I reside at 1751 Granite Avenue. My wife and I have been here approximately a year. We come up from Vancouver. I begin by stating that I have 2 words for the council: due process and hypocrisy. We currently have wildfires in the local area decimating communities. I think we have a wildfire here that needs to be addressed. We came from Vancouver on the guise that we were trying to get away from the scourge that drugs and alcohol have on a societal impact down in Vancouver. So we decided to reside in the local hamlet called Merritt, and we're very happy with our relocation choice. And what has ended up happening was we relocated to the Adelphi Hotel, and we were under the assumption that the area that we found out had quite a sordid past over the number of years was on the up and up to the, brought up to a certain standard that the city would like to have seen, and the people around the local area, businesses included. But the problem with this is that we now lie with an application to a business that we feel in the future of entrepreneurialism and the future of even the children and the locals of the local community may not be a wise decision. There are also mitigating factors with regards to the procurement of the support in which was garnered by the proposed shop, and the means that they went about to gather these support documents and whatnot. We were not actually, my wife and I were not actually formally served legal papers, nor were the other businesses that are very local within the 100-meter vicinity to either accept or give public opinion on what we thought about the local addition of the marijuana cannabis store. So from what I can say is that we all owe it as a basically a concerned citizen and a business owner. We've ended up in a position with the inception of this shop not agreeing with its motives, and we're having to relocate. So we've put our heart and souls into the business, and we've decided that we, within the legal terms of our lease, will be uprooting our business, which we give to the people of Merritt with our wholeheartedness. And we have a future that is undecided at this part. So I'm not pointing fingers at anyone here. I'm just bringing light to certain situations that may be of concern for the people of Merritt and the future of our children. Thank you.
I'm sorry to hear that. Anastaszia Cash?
My name is Anastaszia Cash. I live at 1751 Granite Avenue. When Wes and I moved here, it was for much better life in the country. And when we moved and looked at the place of the Adelphi, we were promised by the new owner that the place was going to be cleaned up and that he was cleaning up everything that was going on in the building. My experience being there as a tenant, without getting into detail or pointing fingers, I can say with the recent article that came out in the Merritt Herald, I was absolutely befuddled by what was written in there, because to my opinion, none of it was true. To me, it was all lies. And from my own personal experience, that place has not been cleaned up. And that's from what's coming within the Adelphi and the staff working there. I'm not going to say how or what, but it just kind of people in the community might be saying that the area needs to be cleaned up, but it also needs to be cleaned up from within the building. So, in this area, there's people bumming change at the bank for money. There's people at the dollar store. We've got people passed out drunk across the street. And we would be sandwiched now in between 2 cannabis shops, 2 liquor stores. And the bar opens, there's a bar there. And we were told by the owner when we leased the place that there was going to be an Italian restaurant or a very high-end Greek restaurant. And then the bar was going to be not like a bar, biker bar, but it was going to be a very high-end martini cocktail lounge with tapas bars, piano players, singers, and it was going to be high-end. And we thought we would be all a part of this and revamping up, the area, and that's what we wanted to be a part of this. And he also told us that any new tenants that would go in there, that we were the new Adelphi, and that we would have say in whoever the new tenants were. So we were completely bamboozled that we were not notified of these new tenants. So this was very disturbing to me. I personally witnessed the way that these signatures were canvassed for the signatures. People were walking by, they were pressing people randomly on the street, pressuring them for signatures. I watched out my window and I saw people. I went out to the front and they were saying, I'm too busy to sign papers, and they were chasing them down the street. They were pressing them to sign, and people were feeling pressured, and they would just sign the papers and run, and they were not even reading the papers and what they were signing. So I don't know how valid those are. I've had people personally tell me that they didn't want to sign them, but they were pressurized into do it. Certain people at businesses said, well, they went there 5-6 times, they just felt pressured, so they just signed it. So to me, that's not very good at all. And I just want to say, like, I've put about almost $200,000 into Desert Divas and Dons. Now with our departure, with certain events that have happened, we are feeling bullied there. We're not feeling safe. I've had to go out and buy new cameras for my house and new fencing because I'm not feeling safe. And I've got to now invest. I've just also bought another $150,000 in laser equipment, and now I have to relocate my business. And this has been very upsetting to me. I've poured my whole heart in this. My business offers services to Merritt that nobody offers within hundreds of kilometers. I've got an immense amount of education, and I'm doing services that are so valuable to this community. And what has happened is just deplorable. And we come here and our business is thriving. It's doing numbers that are so amazing in the worst times of COVID. And this is just, it's just so sad what has happened, because it's just so unnecessary. And I wasn't necessarily against any pot shops going on in the city, but that location and the way that everybody has gone about it is just wrong on all levels. So I hope you will hear what I say and take this respectfully. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but you know, you want to bring a new enterprise to the city, but at the same time you're damaging other businesses as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the developer, is that what we're calling him, a developer?
Applicant.
Applicant, thank you, that's a better term. On screen right now, can we go to the applicant, please?
Is that my cue?
That might be your cue. Now, are you aware that cutting this back, it's not going to be a long presentation, right?
No, I have some written correspondence that I'd like to read out verbatim, and then I have a comment at the end as well before I finish. So hello, White up, Judgqua Willie Sellars, Cookbeat Tegeko. Hello, Chief Willie Sellars with the Williams Lake First Nation. Sorry, I'm calling you from my car today. I'm actually just on vacation, but I knew how important it was to make sure that I was in front and not in person, but at least in person virtually for this presentation today. I'd like to thank the mayor and members of council for the opportunity to speak. I'll keep my comments brief, as the previous speakers have as well, as I'm sure there's other business that your council is keen on getting done. There was a mention of wildfires, and I know the importance of wildfires and how you react to those, because we were evacuated in 2017. Everyone is still suffering the impacts of those wildfires, so I get it. By way of background, I'm the chief, but I'm also a limited partner in Unity Cannabis Limited Partnership, president of Unity Cannabis, which is a general partner of our limited partnership. With respect to our application to start a retail cannabis operation in Merritt, we feel the vast majority of your citizens are in support. Certainly, that is what our engagement has indicated. I think that our friend and landlord, Mr. Serko, will also tell you that his engagement has indicated similar support. Where there is opposition, it seems to be based on the fact that the proposed location is too close to the Koshana Cannabis and will hurt that business. With respect to that argument, we would note that it is Merritt Council that determined the minimum distance from other licensees, and our proposed location is fully compliant with those proximity requirements. If there were issues with respect to the proximity requirements, then that should have been discussed at the time those criteria were adopted, not now when our application is being entertained. The other argument against this appears to be that Merritt can't support another cannabis store. We would once again note that it is council that elected to lift the license cap, and if a discussion was to be had about lifting the license cap, then it should have been had at the time the decision was made to lift the license cap, not now in response to our application. Unity is a small company owned by our First Nation at WLFN. We are used to working cooperatively with businesses in Williams Lake and any other city where we operate or propose to operate. We have a great track record in doing business above board and to a very high standard. I would note that I personally wrote a letter supporting the appeal by a Williams Lake cannabis retail applicant in his efforts to obtain a cannabis license after he was initially rejected within the city of Williams Lake. So writing a support letter for our competition. As a result of that letter and other support letters, the applicant's license was approved and he became our competition. We don't look at it that way, though. The applicant in that case was a fellow business person trying to make a living, and that's what free enterprise is all about. And we acknowledge that and support it. Unity Cannabis is a First Nation business that is the product of British Columbia's first government-to-government agreement with respect to cannabis retail. The agreement is part of BC's commitment to reconciliation with First Nations. Put an exclamation mark on that. We are good, hardworking business people, and we will elevate the standard of downtown Merritt. We will work with our friend and landlord, Mr. Serko, to reinvigorate the Adelphi Hotel. And we will create employment and opportunity for the city of Merritt. We please ask for your support on this application. One thing that I wanted to note was that during our community engagement in our community at WLFN, one of the things that was very apparent throughout our community engagement, we had numerous community engagement sessions over the year it took us to develop the law and community, take into account our elders, our recreation workers, our staff, our parents, and everybody that even lived in our community that wasn't necessarily a band member. One of the biggest feedbacks that we had, of course, 100% support to continue down this road of cannabis and look at getting into cultivation eventually, starting out in retail. But I was curious. I asked about, what does the community think about liquor and a cold beer and wine store in community? 100% opposition. So I get where people are saying that, there's, you look at how mainstream alcohol is, how mainstream beer, wine is, and how much opposition always gets pushed towards cannabis, or people feel that cannabis is medicine, and is why we're so proactively pushing this along and helping other First Nation communities out throughout the province. I'd like to note that, of course, we're doing good things here. We're employing people, we're creating revenue streams, and we're help blazing a trail for First Nations people across the province by leading by example. And that's what we're going to be able to do for, neighboring First Nation communities in the Merritt area. We have created a great dialogue with the chiefs there, and we're hoping to continue to help them employ their people as we go through this journey in cannabis. Thank you very much for your time today. I'd like to hand it off to my colleagues if they have any additional comments, but that's it for me. Cook's Jam.
Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, sure. It's Aaron Manella here. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer, the CAO for the Williams Lake First Nation. It's a real privilege and an honor for us to spend a couple of minutes with you, and so we appreciate it. I guess, I just like to echo the words that Chief Sellars said, but I'd like to emphasize something, is that we have history in the making today. History is in the making in Merritt, British Columbia, because in 2020, the province of British Columbia decided to take a step towards reconciliation and a new burgeoning industry in the industry of cannabis. And they decided to ink an agreement with the Williams Lake First Nation. And to date, there's only one other such agreement that's been inked, and that's with the Cowichan tribes on Vancouver Island. But the reason that I say that history is in the making is because every level of government, starting with the federal government, moving to provincial government, and now in your hands at municipal government, every level of government has had an opportunity to support reconciliation and economic opportunity for First Nation people. And so, Council, I would plead with you now, you have an opportunity to make a decision. To support the framework and the metrics that the province has put into place, and the ability for First Nation people to advance opportunity. The Williams Lake First Nation has members living in Merritt. We intend to live, work, and play in Merritt, and we intend to do business in a way that is at the highest level with the highest premium placed on quality. And so I can assure you that we will be here to act as good neighbors and to act in good faith. But what I would really emphasize is that what this comes down to is you have a choice to make. This is not about cannabis. This is not about alcohol. This is about advancing the interests of a First Nation who has taken a step. When is the last time in the province of BC has a First Nation government approached a municipal government out of its territory and said, look, we are growing and we are finally taking advantage of the opportunity that we have, and we are asking you to support our efforts in reconciliation. And that is what we are asking you to do tonight. And you have a choice to make, and so we thank you for your time. Kirk Dressler is my colleague. He's our Director of Legal and Corporate Services. He was very instrumental in negotiating the agreement with the province of British Columbia, and so I'll invite him to just maybe cap it off and just add a few closing comments before we leave.
One quick comment, because I think Chief Sellars and Aaron have said it all. Just by way of clarification, no member of our organization has ever met Mr. or Mrs. Cash. So I would instantly object to their characterization of our organization, at least in terms of her comments in relation to United Cannabis. Whatever her relationship is with her landlord does not affect us, but her characterization of our business, the employees of our business, is completely unfounded and a cause of great concern. So I hope Council is aware of that, because we have never met that person. So how she's drawn this conclusion about our business, I have no idea. In any event, I thank Council for your time and look forward to a favorable decision. Thank you very much.
Hear your voice, but I have a question for any one of you. I asked previously for you to speak to each of the bands in our area before you came back, and I know it's not a requirement of us to have you do that, but I asked you if you would do that. Have you done that, and what is the outcome?
Yes, we've had discussions with Chief Harvey McLeod and also Chief Stu Jackson. Verbally supportive of what we're doing here, and I had mentioned that what we're doing is blazing a trail for First Nation communities. Of course, every single First Nation community would like to do, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of First Nation communities would like to do what we're doing here, growing our brand, growing into other communities and other regions, creating those revenue streams, creating those employment opportunities. But I mean, we have this massive machine at WLFN, and to see and lead by example and hopefully, work with those communities and their future endeavors into the cannabis industry is a goal of ours, and those verbal communications have started. So by getting into the territory, hopefully we'll be able to build on that with the local First Nations, and that was a commitment made by us in those discussions that we had with those chiefs.
Thank you. We now have to probably make a change so that we can bring others in. So if those of you that have spoken already would be willing to let others in so that they can speak. Ms. Brick, I'll have you fix that. I'll fix it. Yes.
She's just waiting outside.
Yeah, I knew she was outside. Yes.
So she'll come in, and then this is the next group of people that are ready to come in.
Thank you very much. All these water sounds. Ginny, you're up next. Ginny Prowal. State your name and address, please. We'll get you started before the rest of them come in, because you're next on the list.
No time to prepare, you better be on it this time.
Organized. Your Worship and members of council, my name is Ginny Prowal. I live at 2070 Aspen Street. I want to refer to amendment. Sorry?
I think that came from the lobby.
Oh, okay. I want to speak to the amendments to Bylaw 2318, page 170. What happened to my copy? Anyway, regarding water meters. I built my house 23 years ago. At that time, till the present, water meters were compulsory. Unfortunately, there isn't a way to read them externally. But as a member of the previous Water Resource Advisory Committee, we all read our meters every month, and we recorded them on a sheet. And we were shocked to see just how much our consumption had risen in the summertime, up 2 and 3 times. And the worst offenders were the automatic sprinkler systems, because who's monitoring them? Who's going out to look? The only way I knew they were still watering was because I was a member of the, we used to go around. Anyway, so we could hear and see the water meters going. So they were just setting it and forget about it. So I believe in user pay. And right now we're in an unprecedented heat and fire season, and our rivers are very low. So I'm asking this mayor and council to direct Public Works to provide water consumption stats every council meeting, and they do keep track of them themselves. And keep installing water meters, but try to put new ones in that could eventually be read externally. Like I really have a concern when it comes to our water. I know they say we have lots of water. Well, remains to be seen. So are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Prowal?
And you have the copies?
No.
Sheet.
They will come this way eventually.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Barry Roberts next. Please state your name and address.
Barry.
Oh, can I have you turn the, nope, Barry.
Should every time?
Not every time.
Not every time, but this time it happened to go off.
Barry Roberts, 1407 Walnut Avenue. I'm here on behalf of the Cannabis at the Adelphi. There's been a lot of talk about what's been done and what hasn't been done. There's been a lot done. There's been talk of a lot of employment, and which is good for the community. I moved here 5 years ago, and I've seen a big growth since I've been here. And no one said anything about the loss of jobs if this doesn't happen. And there will be, because Mr. Serko puts all his money back into the building from all the rentals, everybody that lives there. So without him having income, there's going to be job losses. So I don't think that's what we want to see in this community, but I'm in favor of it pushing forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Darcy Rosenberg?
Hi, Darcy Rosenberg, 1409 Fir Avenue. I'm here to support the cannabis shop going in the Adelphi. I've been working at the Adelphi now for 17 months over the whole COVID season. The changes in the building are just fantastic. The residents that are there want to be there. They feel safe in our building. Adding a cannabis store, who cares? It's a business in our town. Employment keeps me employed. And that's basically what it boils down to, is employment for our town. Be it a pizza shop, be it a pot shop, a bike shop, insurance. It's a business, and it's a legal business. So I am in full support of the cannabis shop and the Adelphi Hotel, and we're going to bring it to heights you've never seen before. The Adelphi is on its way up again. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila Lambert.
Hi. I just want to say I'm in support of Unity Cannabis going in as well. I work at the Adelphi. I've been working there for a few months. I do the cleaning. I go in there every morning. I clean the parking lot. Garry gets me to clean the parking lot thoroughly, go in, clean the building, and do other things in there. After work, I go to the elders, see if they need things, if they need their rooms cleaned or whatever they need. I just think it's a good idea to get that business in there. I've Googled Chief Sellars. He's amazing. He's done an amazing things. I'm nervous. Everybody's staring.
You're doing fine.
Thank you. Anyway, it's just a good business there. And the people, I was the one that was out there getting signatures for Garry, and I wasn't chasing people. I don't chase people down. It was people walking by. I got a lot of signatures, a lot of support, and a lot of people saying to me how they would like to see the Adelphi back up and running again, that they need downtown to go again. It's really quiet down there for business. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Uh-oh, it's not good news when the chief's got a buzzer going. Steve Whiteman.
Good evening, guys. Hopefully you're all doing well tonight. Please forgive me if I stumble. I'm not good at public speaking, so I have written a few things down. My address is, I live at the Adelphi Hotel, 2101 Christiana Avenue, room 301. And I've lived there for about 6 years, and I'm in support of the cannabis shop opening at the Adelphi. Not only do I think cannabis is good for medical use, but I think that the more businesses that open in Merritt will be better for the economy. And if the cannabis store goes in, there's also talk about a bistro opening up in the bar area. It is also my understanding that the money that Garry will make will be put back into restoring the Adelphi. He has done a great job so far, as I've lived there for 6 years, and there were broken windows, marked up walls, heaters never worked, back stairs as used as fire exits were falling apart, rooms were run down. people that use drugs living in the building, people off the street smoking crack on the roof and sleeping in the hallways. Gary has fixed this and so much more. He's fixed the windows, he's painted the walls, he's redone the hallway floors, replaced the back stairs, fixed the boiler and now have heat, and made the entrance secure. He's kicked out the people doing drugs, and he even has put a stop to making people smoking on the roof, crack on the roof, and sleeping in the hallways by having a lived-in security. He has also done some of the rooms, and they look great, and I can't wait for them to do mine. Also, Gary and the people he has hired are super nice and supportive. They talk to us daily and help us out with anything we need. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Garry Serko?
Good evening. I was told to try not to talk about what was already written. So what I wanted to add was I did a little bit of research, and I found that in February 26, 2019, both the Hive Cannabis and Colchena Cannabis were approved, and they were approved unanimously, I believe, by everybody, by the council here. So, and also, if you recall where the Hive was, the Hive was going to be, was right there in the gun fishing building, and really, I took it upon myself to step the distance from Colchena Cannabis to the Hive building, what would have been the Hive building, and then to our building. There's a 33-step difference. So what's important here is, one response was positive, 3 were negative, but all spoke to retail cannabis in general, and were not specific to the location in question. So with unanimous approval, and I'm just wondering what would have changed. I think we're just talking the same thing, basically. And, you know, if we're talking the same thing, and we can do something to the corner of Colchena and Garcia, and really make it an example for the rest of the town. And I sent a letter to each of the councillors, and I hope you received it. I should have sent it to you as well, sorry. And I said, you know, I would support the Coldwater Hotel succeeding as we do, because 2 great historic buildings downtown would just become a draw for more people. Our business will grow if they can do what we plan to do. And you know, all you have to do is look around downtown. There's 2 automotive parts stores. There's 2 hunting and fishing stores. There's 3 liquor stores, 2 private, 1 public. There's, well, let's say there's going to be 4 or 5 hairdressing stores. That's, you know, we need the balance. And I think that to have something as incredible as Unity, and we've all heard the accolades, that's what we have to do. And, you know, I just wanted to also mention that 50% of the letters from our opposition against were all about this location, but yet there's no mention of a location problem when these 2 were approved. So I just say, you know, let's take that into consideration. I really do want to do what my staff has said, and I think it's not just the staff, it's the former patrons and whatnot of the hotel. They're out here in support as well. And, you know, we can provide clean, safe, very presentable building. And Gord, I hope, is going to show some photographs of what we've done. And I think, you know, I don't know, I just don't want to have to say anything about some of the negative stuff that was said. I think it's really unfortunate, because everything we're doing here is in the city's best interest and everybody's best interest. We genuinely believe it. Thank you very much.
No, oh, I was going to say, I don't want you to turn it off. I think Gordon's up next.
Gordon.
Gordon Karlson.
Hi, my name's Gord Karlson. I reside in Colville at 1411 Walnut Street, and I'm definitely here in support of Garry Serko and the company that he's building here to make a good community building for us, a marquee building. And I've done some research on Unity Cannabis myself. I went and met them at their store and seen the very high end that they can bring us to this town and the community, and to give a service to us that will give our town people a chance to make a selection between one or the other, you know, maybe different products. So it's not one of the same, and I'm definitely in support of the Indigenous community, have an opportunity to set up business in our downtown core. And I'd like to say that, you know, I've had the chance to work with Garry, and I support him 100%. And he's been exemplary of all the things he said he's going to do. So he's allowed me to give these seniors and these people that are in the building, living in the building, a chance to give them a good living, a good place to live in. You know, clean up the bed bugs and give them heat and give them the respect they deserve. And be able to support our seniors, you know. So I've been able to be there with some of our seniors at their dying moments, and he's supported me in those moments too. So I'd like to see you guys to support us, and you know, I know I've reached out to all you guys individually, so you kind of know where my heart's at. This is my community. I came here in 1969. I left town because of the lack of work as a young person, and you know, I want to give young people opportunities in this town. So that's where my heart's at. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Brick, is that it for the public input?
That is it, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. What do we do now? We're looking at 4.1. Adoption of the regular council meeting minutes of June 22nd, 2021. I need a mover that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on June 22nd, 2021 be adopted.
So moved.
And seconded, so Luck and Etchart. Any errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? None carried. General matters. We have a presentation of a scholarship at this point. At the March 9th, 2021 regular meeting, council established a City of Merritt Scholarship Award. This award will be bestowed, my tongue is not working well. It'll be bestowed annually on 2 grade 12 graduates who plan to continue on to post-secondary education. And these are graduates from within the City of Merritt schools. Preference is given to students who have shown leadership in youth or civic activities or who volunteered in the community. The award is for $1,000 for each graduate to support their continuing education. And this is an ongoing commitment to the graduating students of the City of Merritt, and I am proud to announce that Annie Baek and Katie Clausen are the recipients for 2021. Katie Clausen is not with us tonight. She will be with us on August 27th, but this evening we have the pleasure of presenting to Annie Baek. Annie is an outstanding student and community volunteer who graduated in June from Merritt Secondary School. She will be continuing her educational career at the University of Toronto in the fall in the mechanical engineering program. So we're very proud of Annie's accomplishments and wish her all the best as she continues in her educational career. Now I have a letter to present to Annie, and I would like Annie to come up and council to get in behind me so that we can all present this to Annie. So I'm going to ask you, Annie, to come all the way up, or should we meet in the middle? Who's the photographer?
You've been voluntold?
No, if we can take the masks off, that would be preferable. If we can do it for.
Hurry up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess we can't get too close. Can we get the, no.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
We know you'll do us proud.
Oh, thank you, everyone.
Welcome. Have a nice evening.
Welcome.
So all of us are without masks now.
Well,
Moving on to 6.2. This is the Unity Cannabis, Williams Lake First Nation and Adelphi Hotel retail
Your
cannabis.
Worship, item 6.1.
Oh. Let's back that up. Sorry, 6.1, I don't know what I was thinking. Food security assessment, final report to be introduced by Mr. MacArthur.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so we, after quite a bit of time of revising this particular document, and thanks to Council for great input earlier this spring on this, we were able to come up with a final assessment report for food security. And this particular report, of course, will be used to influence policy development for the official community plan, which, of course, is underway currently as well. I won't go into too much detail on this other than to say that there are a number of policy recommendations. You can see those on pages 21 through 24. And those policies specifically would be brought over to the OCP. So with that, if there's any questions, staff are here at your pleasure. And the recommendation from staff is that you receive the food security assessment report. However, if there's any revisions or additional information that you require, we could also bring this back at a later date if that's your desire.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Worship, I just wanted to add one point as well, and this is something that staff have talked about at length, and Council may notice that historically there's been a fair degree of inconsistency as to what we do with master plans when they come in, as to whether they're adopted, whether they're just received for information and how that works. And what we propose doing, because there has been inconsistency with the past, in fact, many of these master plans have not been formally adopted. What we would like to do is take kind of the broad swath of the master plans that we have found that haven't been adopted by Council, bring them back, and then also highlight for you the ones that we would like to make revisions to. We were going to start that on this particular instance, but we wanted to give you a flag as to why it is that we would be changing that particular mechanism. We do think it's important because adoption gives some policy direction and guidance to staff as to your expectation that we actually meet those policy recommendations, whereas just receiving it for information doesn't necessarily do that. What we would like to do as well is anytime there's a new master plan that's being adopted, we would bring it to a committee of the whole where you would see it, discuss it, we would talk about it in that format, and then when it comes to the council meeting, that's when it would be adopted, so that you would have the opportunity to better understand, better scrutinize the policies that you would actually be putting forward, because we feel that it's maybe a little bit unfair to expect you to be able to adopt it at a council meeting when you have lots of other business to be doing over the course of the night, when that maybe your first time seeing this policy may have only been a couple days ago. So that's how we would like to handle master plan adoption moving forward, is setting up an individual committee of the whole to discuss the master plan and then bring it to council for the actual adoption, if you're comfortable with that.
Now, I have a question. Today, the ministry made changes to processing of meat, I believe. And sorry, I don't know beyond that what the changes are. I just read the headline. But that document, from what I understand, is going to make changes, especially to the small owner, small farm owner. There is no adoption made on this. Is it possible to review or try to incorporate those new changes, seeing as how this is so new, into that plan before it becomes part of our repertoire?
Yes, Your Worship. If there's additional information, all of our master plans, of course, can be revised at any time at Council's direction. So, yeah, that's something that we could look into, and I'll make a note to actually look into the changes that were made today. Thank you for flagging that.
Thank you. It was the Minister of Agriculture. Councillor Bangu, did you have a comment?
No, Sean answered it with his presentation.
Thank you. Okay, so we just need at this point, a motion to receive. So, Councillor.
No, I'll just have a couple of quick questions if that's okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. McCarthy, this is a great looking document and there's a lot of information in here. Is there, and as you say, we'd like to, we have a history of rusting the dust off these in a year from now and say, oh, look what we did a year ago. Is there any way we can have a couple of quick wins out of this document somehow? And I know we have, a great example is the farmers market, where we do get a lot of local produce being sold and everything right here in the community. Is there any other quick wins we could be looking at getting going here? Like people that want to turn their front lawns into gardens and things like that. I mean, our garden's just doing amazing this year. It's not in the front, it's in the back. But is there any quick wins we could maybe look at getting out of here? So it doesn't sit on the shelf and disappear?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Absolutely, there's a number of things that we could do here. One of them is working with the food bank. We've already started some discussions around, because they have their strategic planning that they're doing right now. Front yard or backyard gardening. I myself have a vegetable garden that's not doing so well because of the heat lately, but yeah, there are opportunities there. We're looking at potentially having more farmers markets down in Quilchena as well, and of course, anytime you have events like that in the community, it brings food security to the fore, and people start thinking about those sorts of things. So there's a number of items in here that we can look at quick wins over the next year and a half. And of course, all of these items would be influencing the policy and the OCP. So we plan on bringing those forward, and then of course the OCP will be influencing other master plans, including the zoning bylaw, the economic development action plan that we'll be developing over the next year, et cetera, et cetera. So we're making concerted efforts to ensure that action items and recommendations in our documents don't just sit on a shelf. It's really important. So we have some other ideas there too, Sean, around how we're going to kind of keep better track of the action items and things from all the different documents, and so that we can try to move a lot of those forward, not just for this document, but for other master plans as well.
Excellent, thank you. I'm glad to hear that we're getting a little tighter with the food bank as well, so that's good to hear. Thank you.
Councillor Fair.
Thank you. A thought or a question that occurred to me as we were discussing just there is if the plans are going to be available on the website, the city website.
Yes, Thank you, Councillor Fair. Absolutely. So we put all of our master plans on the website, and this one will also be there. It will be initially on Merritt.ca/OCP because it's going to be one of the documents informing the OCP, but then we'll have a permanent location, probably in the master plans list on that page where you can download all of our documents.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm just going to add another quick win would be community gardens. Mr. Smith.
If council would like, we can send out the link to council directly showing kind of a list of all of the different resources that folks can download, but one key one is master plans. We often get inquiries, and we'll make sure to put another blast on the communication side as well, so that if people have specific questions about plans, whether it's the active transportation plan that was recently completed, the housing needs assessment, there's all kinds of different master plans that are recent and more dated that residents can become informed as to what is on the books. So,
seeing no other questions, I need a mover and a seconder that council receive the food security assessment report.
So moved.
Etchard and who over here? Councillor Christopherson. So all in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Now, 6.2. The Unity Cannabis. Williams Lake First Nations and Adelphi Hotel retail cannabis application, and this is the second consideration. We went out for more information, and we got more than we ever could have imagined. So, which was kind of different because this is not a public hearing. This is only a public consultation. So there was no need for a public hearing. So it's just want to mention that. Introduction by Mr. Lewis before I move on.
Thank you, Your Worship. Although you've essentially covered it, this is of course the repeat of the item which you considered for the first time on May 25th. That meeting you instructed staff to seek additional public input, which we did through extending the advertisement in the window of the Adelphi Hotel and additional publicity in the Merritt Herald for 2 weeks. We did not, the second go-around, do any re-delivery to the adjacent properties, which was done the first time. One thing I will note about that, there was never any delivery of notice to the actual Adelphi Hotel itself. We assumed, I think, that everyone in there would be aware of the plans. And the majority of the delivered notices went to the apartment block next door. The 100 feet range didn't reach to many other buildings. So the publicity, obviously the input that came the first time, that was entirely against. That was 13 letters. This time there were, I think, 81 pages of unique submissions, many of which were repeated multiple times, for a total of approximately 326 pages of input that was actually received and processed by council. And I do apologise, there was also one email which arrived this afternoon, which I'll now distribute to you in hard copy. You, of course, still retain the exact same options that you did at the time of the last meeting, although I took out of my written report this time the possibility of seeking additional public input, because you've had quite a lot already. So ultimately, if you decide not to make any comments to the LCRB, then the application cannot advance at this time. If you make a negative recommendation that would veto the application, there's no license can be awarded without a positive recommendation from council. And if you make a positive recommendation to the LCRB that would not be definitive, the LCRB would still be the ones to take the final decision on whether or not to issue a license. So it is entirely up to you to weigh all the requirements on that we place on cannabis stores in Merritt, the public opinion, and what you feel about the location of this store and the impact it would have on the community.
And does anyone want to comment? Councillor Christopherson, thank you.
Basically, two comments, or one's a question. I'm not sure who would have the answer to this, whether it would be staff or perhaps Mr. Serko.
Can I have you speak up a little bit? We're having...
Okay. How's this?
Yeah. Better.
Number one is the cannabis store, proposed cannabis store, just a tenant, or is it a partner in the business?
I can answer that.
Can you come to the mic, please?
Yeah, sure.
We also have it online, so...
Okay. Yeah, the cannabis store, it would, in a legal sense, is a tenant. However, I love to describe all of my tenants as partners, because without them, we can't do what we're doing. But technically speaking, they are a tenant.
So they just pay rent?
Correct.
And there's no business arrangement that some of their funds go into the building or anything like this? It's strictly a rental business?
It is. And Councillor Christopherson, if I could add, with a building that age and what we're doing with it, that was sort of a conscious decision I had to make, because for me I need to focus on the building's well-being, and then make it as favorable for the tenants, every single tenant. So yes, landlord, tenant, nothing else.
Okay, good, thank you for that.
Yeah, and let's not forget though, Chief Sellars had indicated that though they would consider the restaurant space for a food and beverage, but once again, as a tenant. Okay. That was just very clear.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
and my second question is more to staff. Because
Can I start with Mr. McCarthy or Sean? Mr. Smith, thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
So I am concerned with the assertion that council is not acting consistently. And is that a valid concern that we made a decision one way at one time and now are being asked about the possibility of going another direction?
Mr. Smith?
So what I would like to do, Your Worship, is just read off verbatim what our zoning provision is, and then let you know the specific measurements from our perspective, and you can decide what it is that you feel in relation to those. So the provision is that no portion of a cannabis retail store may be located within 150 meters of the parcel line for any property zone park and cemetery P1, or any property with a daycare center, major or public school use in the institutional and public use or a city center district zones. So very, very clearly, this property from the corner of the store, which is what the measurement is, of the cannabis store, to the property line for where Merritt Youth and Family Resources Society is currently, is about 125 meters, so short of 150. What I will say is the logic of the drafters on this, and I will tell you because I was one of them, is because generally speaking, the parcel line was chosen because there's an outdoor component to many or most daycares, but in this particular instance, this is to the back of the building, in which there isn't really daycare activities happening in the back of the building, and so from the corner of the store to the front, it is more than 150 meters. So that's the first consideration. It depends the spirit. We 100% acknowledge that as it stands, the letter of the law, this is short of the specific provision within the zoning bylaw. We took that and also combined it with the fact that there is a current building permit application, of which I understand we received an amended application as recently as yesterday. I recognize that there's concern with others that this may not be moving, but we can confirm from staff side that they are going to be moving. And so we felt confident and comfortable combining those two details, that this was within, it was approvable under the zoning bylaw, and that was the direction that we had provided, and we continue to feel comfortable with that we feel that this is defensible from a zoning bylaw perspective. But with that being said, that's the entirety of the information, and it's council's bylaw to determine how to interpret and what you'd like to do with that information. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. MacArthur.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I echo Sean's thoughts on that in regards to the regulation. Technically, it may not meet it, but in terms of intent, we had to look at it a little bit that way. It's a bit of a gray area, especially because Council, of course, did approve an application for a development permit for the daycare to move to the other location, and as Sean mentioned, we have been processing that file for quite some time. Quite often there's periods of time where we hadn't had information, but we did receive the revised drawings from the applicant. It was actually on Friday. So we are expecting that building permit to be processed and for that business to move. Now, is that 100% guarantee that will happen? No. There are no guarantees, I suppose. But it is the intent of staff to process that building permit application and so that they can begin construction. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor White.
I was sent a copy of a meeting that was held 3 years ago where staff clearly said that the cannabis store could not open in that block until that daycare was gone out of there and open in the other location. And that is staff words in that meeting. So I think that's where a lot of the confusion or
I think that I wholly acknowledge that it is the case. What I can say is the challenge with this is it is going to be, whether it's at the new location, where it will be beside 1937 Kilshanna Cannabis, Kilshanna, which is the one cannabis store, or here, it is going to be within 150 meters of a cannabis shop. It is an inevitability of what the current situation is. How that gets resolved, I can tell you we've talked about it a fair bit at staff and what that looks like and how potential enforcement can happen. So the question is, do you say that, well, we aren't going to process this application because it's too close to a cannabis store now, given it was the development permit application was in prior to that? Do you let the move go through? Do you not let the move go through? I can tell you that I don't see a crystal clear outcome here where there isn't going to be somebody that feels like they're getting screwed in this transaction. It is going to happen no matter what choice is selected. And so if it was the case that staff had indicated that on this particular block it's too close to that particular location, and so until it moves, it's not appropriate. I don't have problems acknowledging that.
Well, there was more in there, and actually, for what was said, that cannabis store shouldn't have been opened in that location at all to start with. So now here we are with the problem.
My understanding was there was no application from the daycare owner at the time that the Kilshanna cannabis store went in.
There was a development permit application that had lapsed, is the short of it.
Okay.
And the information that you had received from staff is that we don't have any assertions that this is going to be moving. It's been more than, was it 12 months? I believe it was 12 months since the date the development permit was issued. And so that was the situation at the time, and so it was staff recommendation that with no guarantee that this is going to be moving there, that you should consider the application on its merits. And if I can go back to the very beginning of time and saying, okay, here are the potential risks that could happen with approving one or the other or any of these things, I wish I would have highlighted that more, because we're in a spot now where it does look like they want to proceed with that move. You will also recall that at the time, the owner of Merritt Youth and Family Resources Society did provide a letter of support for that particular cannabis store at 1937 Kilshanna. So there was, or whether it was a letter of support or verbal support, saying that that owner had spoken with the individuals. I don't recall it right now, but that's the circumstances of it, and I wholly acknowledge that this is, if you're looking strictly at the letter on a meter basis, it's a complicated situation.
And I do recall some kind of waiver from the daycare owner, knowing that when she was putting the application in, the cannabis store was already there, or at least in process of being there. That was my understanding. Okay.
I have another question about the C6 zoning. How does that fit into the picture?
Mr. McArthur?
Yeah, retail cannabis is a permitted use in the C6 zone.
Thank you.
That's not what it says in our bylaws. It's 4.41.
C6 City Centre District, principal use is P, retail cannabis sales.
Thank you. And Councillor Bangu?
Thank you, Mayor. On this staff report here, it's suggesting that the daycare is 65 meters at the closest points of the property line and 105 meters from the front door to the proposed store. And a comment on daycares. Supposedly our bylaw allows a daycare to open up within 150 meters of a cannabis store, but does not allow a cannabis store to open up within 150 meters of a daycare. It's kind of strange that way, but that's what happened.
That's because of the waiver issue.
But back to these numbers here, which ones should we be working with? Both meters on the staff report or the new numbers here? Thank you.
This. Was this the latest one that we have received tonight? Okay.
Your Worship, I can't just pull this out. I actually think that the numbers in that staff report are aired. Again, I have it mapped on our uni site right now. language so you can confirm for yourselves. No portion of a cannabis retail store, so how we have taken that is the corner of the Delphi here. And it is this parcel here, which is the closest portion of the property line, which if you zoom in, that's tough to read, isn't it? It can confirm it says 125.19 meters. Again, this is an approximation, it's GIS software, so if you're looking for it specific to the meter measurement, this is what you'd be looking at. As the crow flies, if you take it from the corner to the front door of that business, it is right here at about the 151.53 meter mark. And so again, the kids aren't playing out in the back of this particular parcel. This is, I think that there's a case to be made that the spirit is to get there. It's within 150 meters of the entrance, but again, letter of the law here is 125.19 plus the fact that it's moving. So again, council's prerogative as to determine whether that is in bounds of the zoning bylaw. As staff, we're comfortable with the assertion, but we take council's direction there.
Thank you. Councillor Etchart. Councillor Etchart, are you ready to? I know you're having computer issues.
I was just looking at the definitions of the zoning bylaw on Merritt.ca, but in listening with Councillor White's comments, I think the perception is difficult that in one breath we're trying to put through this application for this new group that's trying to go in near the daycare, but for the other applicant, they couldn't have the building where they wanted because of the daycare. So I understand that there's a development permit, but
the other cannabis place did. That's Colchena Cannabis, right across from that.
Yeah, but the building that they took wasn't their original first choice. They did end up at 1937 Colchena, but they weren't able to be any closer because of the 150 meter rule at the time. And I understand that things are different now, but it just seems that it's a tough thing because the perception is that we know that the daycare is moving because of the development permit, but when they had applied before, we knew that the daycare was going to be moving because there had been plans, maybe expired, but there had been an ongoing plan because getting development plans and financing and different things takes time. But the Colchena company couldn't be closer to the daycare. They had to be in the location that they're at because they couldn't be any closer to the daycare. So it's a little hard because it seems like we have one answer for one group and a different answer for another. And I understand that zoning has changed. I understand that there's a development permit, but I think that's where we're getting questions from public and concerns from people. And that's comments that I've heard. I don't know if others have been approached or reached, but I do know that those are some of the feedback that I've received from people in town. And anyway.
I don't recall the daycare moving because of the distance to the daycare. The daycare moved because some deal fell through next door.
No, that's not what I was suggesting.
I think he's saying that when it came to you, it was always for 1937, but when it was initially considered at staff, there was an alternate location that they were looking at, and that was the direction that was given, I believe, is what Councillor Edgard is.
Colchena Cannabis didn't originally want to be at 1937, but they had been declined to be at any other location because it was too close to the daycare, where the daycare is now. Even though that it was known that the daycare was in preparation of the move onto the new site where the development permit is.
Your Worship, the only thing that I can say is, again, at the time, they were at this spot and looking to move to the other. So not too much different at first glance, except for the fact that then the development permit had expired and staff wasn't particularly convinced that move was going to be taking place. So the logic was, okay, we don't go where the existing one is. You can go where they're proposing to move because we're not 100% sure that that move is going to take place. Again, we're trying to handle some moving parts and not say no and give the best recommendations that you can given the circumstances. And anyways, they end up landing at that 1937. Now that it's much more than just a development permit, there's a building permit application, and I think that building plans are more imminent than they were in 2018, and it looks like that move really is going to take place now. I think that it's very consistent in that if we were at the stage we are right now where there was a building permit application for a daycare, staff would have been saying, no, 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 that other site probably isn't suitable. This one over here is likely more suitable. So I think that the direction from staff, though I completely acknowledge that when you're talking with something that might happen, there's always going to be a degree of uncertainty with it, and we erred on the side we thought was likely to be most accurate back then, and we're erring on the side of what we think is likely to be most accurate today, and that's the challenge as I can present it. So again, our apologies if you feel that we have kind of misled, wrong, given poor direction or advice, because I completely acknowledge that this is challenging and complicated, but I do want to say that I think that on both occasions we have tried to read the tea leaves and provide the best approximation we can as to what's likely to happen and what's going to be most closely in harmony with the spirit of what that buffer zone provision is. So that's what we've got for you on buffer zones.
I just know that with all the information that's out there, with all the comments and all the opinions that people have, this isn't an easy thing to navigate when you look at everything. You want to make sure that everyone in town is being treated fairly. So,
and there's a lot of information out there that may not necessarily be factual.
Thanks.
Okay, Councillor White.
Well, I certainly did my homework, that's for sure, and I've spoke with every chief from all the local bands. 3 bands were not contacted at all, knew nothing about it. One was contacted the night before pictures and the story was published in the newspaper the next day. And one didn't say when he was contacted, but he was in support of it. The other chiefs said that chief did not speak for the rest of them. And in Chief Willie's presentation in his letter, he said that we do not want to share the province's goal of achieving reconciliation with Indigenous people. And for me, what I don't share is being bullied as a representative of this community to believe my reconciliation with an outside Indigenous group coming into my community in another Indigenous territory without following the proper protocol and procedure.
And
well, I guess the question to that is, do we not feel that our local groups should have been consulted?
we can't force that. That is not a requirement of what any business coming into town is, and this is a business. And I asked them to do it, but I'm under no authority to say it must be done. So I asked, they did contact 2 of them, and not one of them had mentioned anything to me about not supporting this project. So I don't know.
I think because they're coming in as another another band from another town coming into a territory basically of 5 other bands, I would think that there should be some sort of respect there of some kind.
There is nothing that we can refer to in our bylaw that says we eliminate somebody because they haven't talked to First Nations bands.
I realize that, but they're coming as another band, a whole other band.
That is why I asked that they talk to First Nations. They talked to 2 who have given their support. They already acknowledged they didn't talk to all of them, but they're not under an obligation to talk to all of them.
2 of them did not give their support. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
I understand what you're trying to
Plus,
tell me.
in the letter, he said that he did speak with them, and he didn't.
He acknowledged speaking to 2 of them. Mr. Lewis. Oh.
Thank you, Your Worship. We were just wondering as staff if there were further questions to either staff or to the applicants, because you really are doing quite a lot of debate at the moment.
Yeah, we are. We are. Is this a question?
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Questions to staff. One of the things, obviously, the daycare that's existing there has been in the process since about 2016, 2017 of moving from that location to the new location on Quilchena. There's been a lot of frustration, as I understand it, in that process. They've been a little frustrated in the process, and I'm sure staff has as well. But can you give us, Mr. MacArthur, and this is my first question, is there any timeline of how we can get that daycare out of there as quickly as possible and give them any assistance we can to get that done? And maybe that'll help on some of this. That's my first question.
Mr. MacArthur.
Thank you, Councillor Luck, for your worship. Building permits are processed as we receive information, and so that's one of the challenges that we've had. We originally had the building permit application quite some time ago, but we've been waiting for revised drawings from the applicant. As I mentioned earlier, we received those just late last week. Yeah. So our 1 day a week level 3 building official consultant is working on that. Because it is an assembly building, it has to be our level 3 building official that works on it. So it is with him, and he will process it as fast as he can, but that's about as far as I can go on that. We are still processing files fairly quickly, so it's, but I don't want to say too much more than that, because this particular applicant has taken a long time to move their application forward. It's a 2-way street, and so we hope that it will continue to go smoothly, and the group that they have working for them, including their architecture firm, etc., are very good to work with. So we're expecting it to move smoothly from here. And that's about all I can promise, really.
No, that's perfect. Thank you, Mr. McGrath. My second question is directed to Mr. DeGreg. And you gave us 3 options at the beginning, the introduction of this. Could you please detail those 3 options again for us of what we need to approve it, not approve it, or just send it on through without any opinion? I think, does that sum it up, or you can clarify for me?
Mr. Lewis.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Luck. So the LCRB, the Cannabis retail regulations require that in order for a license to be issued, a municipal council must make a positive comment. So your options are always, you have 2 separate options, questions to ask. One is, do you make a comment at all, yes or no? And if you are going to make a comment, is that comment going to be positive or negative, or potentially neutral? In order to have any chance of issuing a license, you must issue a positive comment, because a negative comment would prevent the application from being issued, and a neutral comment or no comment at all would prevent further consideration until you've made a positive comment, because the regulations require that a license cannot be issued until you have made a positive comment. So essentially your options are, do you make a comment or not, and if you do, what's in it?
If you do, it must be positive, otherwise it doesn't proceed.
Vote yes or no.
I thought I heard something.
Mr. Smith is absolutely correct that the simplest way to think about it is, are you in favor or against, yes or no? I was doing the far more technical version, but you can just completely put my actual thing to one side here, right? It is, you can think of it as yes or no, that is much easier.
I appreciate the clarity, that's why I asked, because I thought I heard something a little bit different last time, so thank you for the clarity from both of you.
Councillor White.
Where do minors fit on the petitions or the support letters or whatever you want to call them?
Pardon me, could you?
There are minors on the petitions.
Mr. Lewis.
Through your worship to Councillor White, it is entirely up to you as council how you wish to weigh any of the submissions. The requirement in the legislation is people who feel they are affected by the presence of the store.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that technically speaking, the legally binding nature of anything a minor does or any type of contract or anything like that is there is legal standing for it. So you take it however you want to take it. And again, I really wanted to add as well that this is a city-driven process as opposed to a statutorily driven process. The statute says you must have one. And so it's your, you get to create your own adventure as to how you interpret that and whether it's good for the community or not.
Okay. We are now looking at a recommendation. We need a motion. The recommendation is that council recommend to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch that a non-medical cannabis retail store license be issued to Unity Cannabis. I need a mover.
So moved.
Do we not get the options, or is this?
We've got a mover. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
We've got a mover and a seconder. Okay, and we can speak to this. We can now debate.
Finally.
Anybody have any more debate? I think we heard tonight that the process was city-driven. We made the rules. We said this is who can apply, this is who can't, it was not a public hearing. It was only information from the public as to which way the public felt they wanted to go. The rest is up to council to determine whether this moves forward or not. Councillor Fair.
Thank you. With regards to the zoning difficulties, I'd say that staff was dealing with a strange situation with moving parts that I don't think anybody could have predicted. As Mr. Smith has said, a crystal clear resolution for anyone. So I am comfortable with the result of that and the way that goes forward, because it's just the way it happened. And so I'm not about to begin to argue against something because of those conditions. As far as making the decision whether or not to recommend, I'm not comfortable with the fact that the province has put us in that position. I think it's a downloading of responsibility. Free enterprise is supposed to mean that businesses can do what they're meant to do, as long as they follow the rules, and the rules that we've set out they have. So for us to try and decide which business should have the chance to succeed really flies in the face of that. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Councillor Christopherson. I'm sorry. Councillor Christopherson.
Okay. I
Councillor White
appreciate
is next.
Councillor Fair's comments because that's basically the direction I'm coming through. They've gone through the process, and so it's a legal business. I very much appreciate that the Adelphi is going to become a vibrant part of the downtown core. I'm not particularly in favor of cannabis sales, but that's a personal choice on my part. And this is a business decision. I would have concerns if the city decides to choose which business can come here and what ones can't. We don't do that for other businesses. We don't decide whether there's too many chicken shacks downtown. So I will be supporting this motion.
Councillor White.
Is in the unless it's changed, in the local government role in licensing, I read that the cannabis retail store must be a standalone business. What does that mean?
It means that they operate in a self-sufficient manner, and that's what they do. It doesn't mean there has to be in a building all on its own, if that's what you're referencing.
Well, I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
It's about the operational context. It can't be attached to a bunch of other entities. It is a standalone entity of its own.
And one more point is that, and maybe somebody can answer this, is that there will be, as soon as the daycare moves, the government store will be applying?
Don't know.
Through your worship, Councillor White, I don't think we've heard anything in recent months from BC Cannabis about the prospect of opening any store in Merritt.
Okay.
Councillor Bengu.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to commend the owner of the Adelphi on his attempt to revitalize that piece of property. It's quite amazing what you've done so far, and I truly look forward to the finished product. And I strongly feel that Merritt appreciates the work that you're doing. The rules permit another cannabis store to establish so long as it's not within 100 meters of another cannabis store. More importantly, competition is good. Unfortunately, our rules do not allow a cannabis store to open up so close to a daycare. And for this primary reason, I'm unable to support Unity Cannabis at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Luck.
Many people accuse me always of making up my mind. I've already had my mind made up when I come to council on some things, but I'll tell you right now, my mind is not made up on this one at this point. This is a tough one. There's some things that I've heard that I wasn't aware of, some issues that are going on. But you know what? This is indicative of the problem, and I think I can't remember. I think it was Councillor Bengu that mentioned the provincial or Councillor Fair actually the downloading of the provincial government responsibilities, and this is just takes the wind out of the sail of the council on some of these things, and this has just been the nightmare of this cannabis legalization here in the province, and they wonder why they can't make any money, and they wonder all the rules and the regulations and all this kind of thing, and this has been very, very frustrating for Unity and for all the cannabis stores that have been open, and not just cannabis stores, but the growers and operations of the big units as well, providing product to all these stores and everything. So this has been very, very frustrating for me. I've listened to our council, to the yays and the nays, and some of the, spoke to some people out in the public as well, a few, and it's a tough one. This is a real tough one. But you know what? At the end of the day, somebody mentioned, as one of the councillors mentioned, is that you know we've had some struggles around locations of daycares and things like that, and you know problems in that. And this is a business like any other business. It'll be licensed like any other business. There's no rules about if the rules are in place. It is to allow these retailers to open and to function in our community and provide jobs and income. I am very, very sad that it's an out-of-town group that has come here to open a store and take their profits out of our community. Sure, some of it will roll back to some lease payments and everything, but let's be honest, most of this money is going to roll out of town. It won't even be ours. It won't circulate in our community. It's a Williams Lake-based community, but here nor there, it's still a business. I mean, lots of businesses do that. But it would have been nice if we could have local entrepreneurs, which I really support as you know, some of my opinions on some of the other things that come into town. But that's a sad part of it. It would have been nice to have one of our local bands provide the resources here in our community. That would have been really nice. But as Councillor Christopherson said, this is a business. It's legal. It's licensed. We had a limit of 4 in. We've got 2. We took the limit off. We've got 2. You know, it's very, very interesting here how it's worked out. And you know what? At the end of the day, I guess they'll decide who stays and who goes through their operations. And that's just like we have too many gas stations. One of them closes. Too many burger joints. One of them closes. And we've seen that happen in our community. So. Well, just a couple of comments, and like I say, I'm a little frustrated in the whole thing, and I wish it was a little bit easier process, but that's my 2 bits worth at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Richard.
It was noted earlier tonight that Hive Cannabis had applied for a license and was approved, and one of the letters of submissions had mentioned that they had taken an approval and opened elsewhere. Could that happen with this application as well? Once approved, it could move? It could be transferred to another town or location?
No. Again, you are approved by the province as an entity, but you still must receive a recommendation in the local government for every unique store that you want to open. So if it gets approved here, they can't take the approval that this council has given and have that count as approval in whatever other jurisdiction that they go to. They're going to have to go through a process in that jurisdiction. What happens is, because any entity can operate, I believe, I'm not an expert in this legislation, but I believe that they can operate up to 6 stores elsewhere. The provincial kind of regulatory process means that they will go and do their due diligence to see if you are someone who is authorized to be a retail cannabis vendor, and if so, you can have up to 6, but you still need to go through that process in each individual jurisdiction.
Okay, thanks.
Well, what we have here is a legal business, as it's been mentioned before. It's licensed, federally approved. Not just for recreational, but medicinal purposes as well. This is not somebody just coming in to sell drugs to our locals. We have a daycare that has basically waived their rights to the new side to go next to another cannabis store. So I'm not too concerned that they're, maybe 5 meters away on their front end, or even that, I don't know. But back to back, it fits the definition. So I'm fine with where it is, and it will be moved closer to another daycare, another cannabis store. This is provincial downloading. We don't have to make decisions on any business that comes to town. They either get a business license or they don't. And so here we are put in this position. For some reason, I'm still not quite sure, but I don't like the decision. But in reference to being local, the fellow that owns Colchena has 6 other franchisees, and he's not from Merritt, he's from Surrey Lake. Is it Surrey Lake or Summit Lake? Surrey Lake. And the other one I don't think is local at all anyways. The one up the hill that we're not even discussing. The local bands could have applied. They didn't apply. They weren't ready to apply. They may be ready in the future, and we'll welcome them with open arms. But at this point, we have a business looking to start a business, and our consultation process said some people are for it, some people aren't for it. Well, we know that already. So this will have my support, given that I don't see any reason why we can't. And our zoning and everything we've got says that this entity is eligible, and I think we have an obligation to say yes they are and approve that. So I'm going to ask the question at this point. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We can move on at this point to 6.3. No, we don't have a 6.3. We have a 7.1.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Mayor Brown, I just need to speak that you said that Colchana Cannabis owns 6 other locations. We do not own 6 other locations. We own our one location on Colchana Avenue that we put our heart and soul into. And we wanted our location to be down near the Adelphi, and we were told we weren't allowed. This is going to come to a lawsuit with the city. I just want you guys to know that if this gets passed, it's going to come to a lawsuit with the city.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry but I just needed you to know that we do not own 6 other locations.
I believe it was your husband or whoever represented.
We do not, he never said that we own 6 other locations. Never once.
I think he was talking about the other company.
What?
Whatever he said was about the other company.
Williams Laker owns 6 other locations. Is that right?
He said, I think what he said is that you're actually able to have 8 locations as a licensee.
Okay.
This will be Unity's 2nd location. We do not own 6 locations. We have never, this is our only location on Colchana. We moved our heart and our family to Merritt to join the rest of our family members that have been upstanding community members and business owners in this town because we love Merritt. And we wanted our location to be down near the Adelphi. And at that November 16th meeting, it was said from the city planner that until the final was done at Chapman and Colchana, that there was no way that we could take a location down at the other end of town. No way, until there was a final.
Can I have you come and talk to staff tomorrow? Or talk to me and staff tomorrow? Right now, we're in the middle of a council meeting, and it's really not appropriate for this conversation to take place.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I'm sorry, but I just needed to make it known that we only own the one location. I'm sorry for bursting in, and thank you for your time. And thank you.
Thank you. So I have gotten Colchana mixed up with My Buddies. Who is My Buddies?
That's up top.
That's the one up top of the hill.
Okay, they're the one with the 6 locations. 6.
Well, you better be clear about that.
We don't want them banging on the door.
Say no more.
There was somebody that stood in front of us at the last meeting and told us they had 6 locations. I thought it was this fellow, but
no.
Okay, my mistake. We will move on to 7.1. Bylaw 2320-2021 Fire and Safety Regulations Adoption. And we had the information previously. We had 1, 2, and 3. We've adopted those. We've read 1, 2, and 3. We're now looking at adopting. I need a mover and a seconder to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Luck and Etchart. And, okay. Anybody want to speak to this? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor White?
No, I'm not opposed.
Okay, thank you.
Trying to get this open.
7.2, Amendment to Waterworks Bylaw number 2181, 2015. Mr. Lois, do you have a staff report for us?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is possibly one of the smallest bylaws in terms of text that you will ever consider. This is in response to a direction from Council from about 8 months ago now, where we were instructed to bring forward an amendment to the Waterworks Bylaw, which has since, I believe, 1983, required owners to plumb to install a water meter unit and to purchase this from the city, but during which time we have never actually operated a water metering program. As such, Council instructed us to bring forward a proposed change to the bylaw which would remove the obligation to install such a meter, absent such a program, but to retain the obligation to install plumbing which would allow for the installation of a meter in future. As such, this bylaw does exactly that by inserting the word non-residential 3 times, which would remove the obligation to insert a so at the moment, there's an obligation to install a water meter in all new construction. This would simply make it in all non-residential construction. And then a new clause to require plumbing exists, which would allow for the future installation of such equipment should it be required. So essentially, this is entirely up to you to decide if you want to continue down the path that you instructed us to in November, and this is just in response to that.
Yes.
Thank you. And are there questions for staff? Councillor Richard.
So if we make the one change to non-residential, if somebody's building a garage that has a washroom in it, do they have to put a water meter in it then?
Sorry, I just turned my microphone off too quickly. Through your worship, Councillor Chad, if you mean a commercial garage, then that would require one as a non-residential service. But if they're doing a home garage just to store a vehicle in, then I would presume that would be a residential service.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that that was considered residential, because sometimes people will decide they want to build a large garage or something like that as well.
I'm pretty sure Mr. MacArthur would consider a garage in that context a residential thing, although I wouldn't presume to speak for him about I just did, so, you know.
I wouldn't presume to do what I just did.
Mr. MacArthur.
I can confirm that Mr. Lois's assertion is correct. That would be considered a residential service, and so we would not be providing a water meter at this time until such time as a water metering program comes into effect in the future, potentially.
That's what I thought, but I thought I'd better ask just to confirm.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions for staff? Okay, I need a mover that Council read Waterworks Amendment Bylaw number 2318, 2021 for a first time.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Very good.
Councillor Luck first. Who seconded? Councillor Christopherson. And any comments on this? Councillor Luck.
I'd like to thank staff for bringing this forward. When I built my home here a couple of years ago, they handed me my prints back, my building permit, and a water meter. And I said, oh, that's weird. Am I going to get metered for water? And everybody else said, no, nobody pays on their meter. And I go, why am I getting this then? It could be antiquated by the time we have a program. So I'm really thankful that staff saw the wisdom in doing this and getting this taken care of. I appreciate the comments from Ms. Prowal this evening. I do not like water meters, but it's a fact of life. We must look to getting a water metering program in the city as soon as we can. And so that's part of the staff recommendation, so I fully support that as well, because that's the only way to bring fairness and equity into a water system in our city. So I fully support. So thank you, staff, for bringing this forward.
Not seeing anybody else. I'm going to call a question on reading it the first time. All in favor? Opposed? None. carried. And that I need a mover and seconder that council read Waterworks Amendment Bylaw 2318-2021 a second time.
So moved.
Second.
Fair and White. And any question or any comments? All in favor? Opposed? None carried. And a mover that council read Waterworks Amendment Bylaw number 2318-2021 a third time.
So moved.
Second. Oh, no.
Fair luck. I'm not sure what order, but that'll do. All in favor? Opposed? None carried. Move to 7.3, Earthworks Bylaw 2313-2021 and Land Use Amendment and Development Approval Procedures Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2319-2021. And Ms. Brick, staff report.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are two bylaws to introduce this evening for three readings. The first is the Earthworks Bylaw 2313-2021, which introduces regulations to manage the movement of soil and other materials in the City of Merritt. The second bylaw that is up for consideration is Land Use Amendment and Development Approval Procedures Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2319-2021, which establishes the permit fee structure for this process. And these bylaws will provide the City of Merritt with a formal process to manage the movement of earth and other materials to mitigate negative impacts on the neighboring properties and the environment. The minimum threshold triggering a permit requirement is set at 30 cubic meters and the permit fee is set at $100. This threshold will provide homeowners who are doing landscape or minor earthwork jobs on their properties the ability to continue without a permit while ensuring that measures are in place for larger projects. The regulations, they will manage drainage, erosion, they will strengthen the protection of riparian areas. The bylaw will also ensure adequate protection of city-built infrastructure and environmentally sensitive areas. There is also a requirement in the bylaw for security deposits. So in case anything gets damaged, we have insurance, or the contractor will have insurance in the amount of $2 million and a security deposit of up to $5,000. This bylaw will also mitigate negative neighborhood impacts of odor, noise, dust, and will establish truck routes. So we will know in advance where the trucks are going to be going so that you're not going to have 60 trucks driving past the school, if we can help it at all. The certification from a registered professional that the deposited soil is not contaminated, so that'll help protect the environment as well. And I'm available for any questions, as is Mr. MacArthur. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Brick? Councillor Luck.
I have one question. So up on Linden Creek Road where I live, there's a rock pit there and they truck rocks out of there. The rock pit is in TNRD land, on Crown land, yet they use our roads. How is that going to work for us?
The bylaw won't be addressing that, unfortunately.
It won't be?
It's for lands within the City of Merritt. We don't have anything in the bylaw for truck routes if there's not a permit that's involved, so there wouldn't be a permit involved in that process.
Right, right. So I mean, here's these big heavy trucks rolling down our roads all the time with this rock. Is there something we should be looking at in the future, amending this bylaw sometime in the future?
Mr. Smith, I defer to Mr. Smith on this.
Sorry guys, but that's the question.
Our bylaw can't apply outside of the City of Merritt jurisdiction, but I think that you do raise a good point. It was actually a point that we fairly recently talked about, is when it comes to the effects that kind of non-tax paying entities have on the City of Merritt, making sure that we're mindful of the effects that those individuals have and looking to ensure that there's some kind of recompense, whether it's directly from the businesses through the TNRD, ensuring that maybe it's transfer payments or something along those lines. So it's something that we are mindful of. And then the second point is, of course, if it's a cleanliness and dirt on the roads type thing, having good relationships with the businesses to ensure that they're kind of taking care of their externalities in the operation of their businesses. So you are hitting the head on one of the biggest challenges for many communities, is what happens when the folks that use your services, a lot of them come from outside the city of Merritt. So I think that you've got a good example here, and something that I look forward to having discussions
And
about. Awesome.
TNRD has a buffer zone policy. What that does, I'm not exactly sure. But Mr. MacArthur, you're aware of it?
Just before that, just for clarification though, Mary, is that it's in TNRD land, it's Crown land, but
Yes.
I think it's MOTI. That he makes it worse.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ruck. And just to add on to Ms. Burke and Mr. Smith's comments, if materials are being trucked into the city to a site within the city, then that site would have a permit, and then anything being trucked into the city would be under that permit. So if materials are trucked from that site to a site within the city, then it could be regulated. But if it isn't under a permit in the city, then it wouldn't be captured. So just a clarification on that. And with regards to the buffer, that's usually taken into account with referral process. So if activities are happening in areas M and N outside the city, the TNRD will reach out to the city and consult with us. But with regard to trucking materials, that's not usually something they would reach out to us on. It's usually with developments and those sorts of things, whether it be activities like the Trans Mountain Camp at Cheddar Ranch or other activities like that. So, yeah.
But looking at a gravel pit, basically, we've got trucks leaving. Would that not,
For the establishment of such
would that not become a referral process for us through TNRD? I mean, if they're that close to homes?
I think so.
Usually when there's an establishment of such a site, it would be. But I'm not sure about ongoing activities. We would have to reach out to the TNRD on that one.
Yeah, because I think this has been going on for a couple of years now.
Yeah, going for a while.
But I don't recall any referral process.
Thank you.
Councillor Christopherson.
I thought we had faced this issue when there was the proposed gravel pit west of town that was going to be going through the town, not necessarily into the town for delivery of services, but using the highway straight down Nicola and up the other side, plus the logging companies that weren't delivering logs inside of Merritt, but just transporting through to Princeton and so on. I thought we had already addressed this issue at one time.
Mr. Smith.
I think you're right that there was a consultation meeting for Merritt residents right around the same time as that. I think that was part of what was confusing for residents. Admittedly, the one that you were talking about was also in the TNRD, but it's a little bit further out. And once again, somehow the city of Merritt became the focal point of discussion for something that was not the city of Merritt activity, and it's that always introduces challenges. But there was a public consultation meeting to discuss that at the time, but I didn't personally attend. I can't speak as to what the content was, but there was one.
I don't know who came up with the solution. Just
Anybody else have questions for staff? Okay, seeing none. I need a mover that Earthworks Bylaw 2313-2021 be read a first time.
So moved.
White and Christopherson. Any comments? Debate time? Councillor Fair.
Thank you. I'd like to say that I'm very pleased to see this this come forward. I think the responsible use of our environment is increasingly important. So I'm just glad that this has come to the fore. Thank you.
Councillor Christopherson.
I'll try not to make it a question.
Yeah, we don't need questions now, we need debate.
He's always answering.
I believe we had a concerned citizen that was really concerned about trucking materials out near Collettville through town that I think cadmium was the issue in it. I'm just, in reading this, I thought perhaps had the people that were doing the hauling, which was usually done at night, would have to have some kind of a permit to haul material from one location to another. So I'm hoping that the situation that I'm trying not to question, but alluding to would now fall under our jurisdiction, that if you're moving material from one location in Merritt to another location in Merritt, you'd have to have a permit. So that was a question.
Is that a statement?
That was a statement, that wasn't a question. That I'm hoping that's the intent of this motion.
The assumption that he might be right or he might be wrong. Mr. MacArthur, can you help us out, please?
Yeah, so the trigger for this permit is the movement, placement, or removal of soil within the city on a city parcel. It can be to another city parcel. It can be from externally outside the city to another parcel in the city. But that 30 cubic meters is the trigger point. So for any works that are being done that require at least that amount of soil, that's what would be triggering it. So if you're moving it from one parcel to another, exceeding that amount within a 1-year period, that's what triggers the permit. So that, I'm not sure if that's clear enough.
I think the intent here would clarify the situation that had developed. So
I have a
like
question.
the motion.
How much is 30 meters? Is it
30 cubic meters, Mr. Henderson? I think it's around 6.
three garbage?
Is it?
I was going to say
3.5 truckloads.
Regular truckloads or your trucks?
Yeah.
So a tandem load of gravel,
Okay.
about 7 cubic meters.
Okay.
745. I think it
A
would.
tandem load meaning your big dump truck or so.
No, we don't know.
Mr. Smith.
I just wanted to add, Your Worship, that there was considerable debate on the staff side as to the right number, and you'll see in this Briggs staff report that communities are kind of all over the map on what that right number is. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at how many applications we get. We want this to be capturing those that are most important, but not capturing every single thing under the sun, so that staff is spending the whole time processing soil deposit removal applications. So we think that this is probably going to be a good landing spot, but if it's not, we may come back to the number amendment, and that's really what this comes down to. We'll run it here and see how it goes.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Richard, did you have your...
Yeah, no, I did, because I think this is a positive bylaw to have, because otherwise you have all sorts of construction projects that happen in areas where they shouldn't, or all sorts of weight going in pipes that could cause disasters all over, which only seem to break on streets, you know, December 26th or something, in the middle of a family event. Right, Mayor? Yeah. So I can see where situations like this could be avoided, and I can think of a lot of things that have happened in recent memory, so it's a positive thing. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bangu.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Since we're asking questions, do you have an idea of projected revenue? Thanks.
Not a moneymaker.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bangu, through your worship. No. We haven't estimated how many permits we're going to be issuing, but if we go based on building permits, we do approximately 100 of those a year, so could be up to $10,000 potentially. I don't think it'll be that many, because 30 cubic meters will exempt a lot of those applications, so it's going to be a small amount of money.
Thank you. Mr. Lois.
And through your worship, the council, then just as a clarity on how municipal fees need to be arrived at, we are required to match that somewhat. They're essentially there to cover the cost of doing business, of administering the scheme, so they're never intended as any kind of a revenue raiser or money maker for the city.
Thank you. And, oh, you answered it. Okay. So, have we exhausted our debate? Looks like we have. I'm going to ask the question. Hold it. Do I even?
Yes, we do have a mover and a seconder
Thank you.
for the first reading.
Thank you. And all in favor? Oh, first reading we've already taken, haven't we?
No. This is the vote on the first reading.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. And that land use amendment and development approval procedures bylaw amendment bylaw 2319-2021 be read a second time.
So moved.
Yes, second Earthworks.
Yeah.
Your worship?
Earthworks.
Earthworks, your worship.
Oh, I jumped.
Yes, you did.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm wanting to get this over. Okay, so let's back that up. That Earthworks bylaw 2313-2021 be read a second time.
So moved. Second.
And any more debate on this one? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ms. White, are you with us still? And that was in favor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I need a mover and seconder that Earthworks bylaw 2313-2021 be read a third time. Etchart?
Second.
Luck? And seeing no debate, all in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. And that brings us to the land use amendment and development approval procedures bylaw amendment bylaw 2319-2021.
That's a long title.
And you've spoken to that already?
Yes.
Any questions for staff? Okay, any debate? We already asked for questions from staff. No, seeing no debate, all in favor?
Do we want to
Your worship.
Whoa. Now we need a mover and a second.
I'll move it.
Okay. Councillor Christopherson moves. Councillor White second. Sorry guys, I'm just,
We're still around.
I'll get with it. So, a first time reading, all in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. And land use amendment and development approval procedures bylaw, amendment bylaw 2319-2021 be read a second time.
So moved.
Second.
Etchart, Fair, and no debate. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. And that land use amendment and development approval procedures bylaw, amendment bylaw 2319-2021 be read a third time.
So moved. Second.
Christopherson, and I think it was Etchart. Seeing no debate, all in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Now we are just getting into new business, 8.1. So, excuse me, the Trans Mountain TNRD City of Merritt Fire Services Agreement introduced by Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to thank Fire Chief for being here tonight as well. The agreement that you have in front of you today is an agreement between the City of Merritt and the TNRD, where the city would provide fire services for the Trans Mountain Camp, but it is through the TNRD as the authority having jurisdiction in exchange for the total sum of $312,405. This would be a period for 18 months, and if these individuals are needed for additional time after that, they can be extended at the same monthly rate for an extra period as well. This all came about because the Trans Mountain Camp was looking for fire service, and there are some challenges with the City of Merritt providing that service directly. can theoretically be done, but only with the approval of the TNRD board, and the TNRD prefers to have this process go through them. And so if you have any questions, we're happy to take them. As far as the impacts on the department, it will go to hiring 2.5 additional firefighters to provide coverage for the municipality during this period. That amount was arrived at as the number that we would need to ensure that there's going to be no decrease in fire service for Merritt residents as a result of us providing fire service up there. And what that's likely going to mean in practice, and Trans Mountain is comfortable with it, is that during those times where there isn't a necessity to provide fire service out there, is we will have improved service in the city. And that's much needed at a time when the fire department has been very active. So we are looking forward to receiving this additional support, and as staff, we're strongly in support of this agreement. Anything else to add, Chief?
I don't think I could add any more to that. It spells it out well.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Smith? Councillor Luck?
Yeah, just one clarification on the costing of this, $312,000 and change. That includes the resources, including depreciation on equipment, all that kind of thing. I'm guessing that's what that takes in as well, or is that just bodies?
Bodies. So again, when someone receives fire service in the city of Merritt right now, it's all just built into the taxes, where we have the equipment, but that equipment, we don't know how often it is going to be required to be used out there. What we can do is put the charge on bodies with, again, benefit loading and premium to make sure that there's going to be cost coverage for the municipality. But in terms of cost recovery for specific incidents, supplies that are used, if there's something really serious that were to occur and there was tens of thousands of dollars, we would likely have a conversation, but that is not expressly covered in the services.
Okay, thank you.
So most of the excess costs would be budgeted into our operating budget.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay, so we need a mover and a seconder that council authorize entering into an agreement with the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, under which the city will provide fire services for the Trans Mountain Camp for an 18-month term in exchange for the total sum of $312,405.
So moved.
Luck and Hitchart. And anyone want to speak to this? I think it's a nice sum of dollars and additional staff, and it'll do well for our fire department. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. So on to 8.2, BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant, Rotary and Central Park Trail Improvements. Mr. MacArthur.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is with regard to the province's grant opportunity that's available currently, the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant. And in order to ensure that we could meet the timeline for this, because the deadline to apply is the end of this month, we wanted to use a shelf-ready project. And we had a project for Central Park and Rotary Park that we had created designs for, or had a consulting firm create designs for us. And we had submitted that to a previous grant, which unfortunately was not successful. So we've decided to recycle that project to put forward for this application. There are some differences between that grant that was previously supported by council. The previous grant was 100% funded, whereas this is 70%, so there would be some cost attributed to the city if we were successful to this. And the other difference is some of the requirements in the application itself. So we had hoped to bring the complete application to council tonight, but it's not yet been prepared or completed by staff. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to address those. But other than the fact that the finances are different, everything else is fairly similar between the two grants, to be honest.
Any questions for staff? Councillor Luck.
Sorry, Barry, just a couple things. one of the things we see on social media is why is the city growing for this, and why are they fixing a trail, why aren't they fixing roads and things? Mr. McCarthy, would you be prepared to talk to that a little bit and why we do this versus maybe fixing roads sometimes because of the, if I put you on the spot, I hope I didn't put you on the spot. Yeah, well, I know it's council decision, but why is these recommendations being brought forward and the importance of why we do this through the grant process?
Sure. So
sorry for putting you on the spot like that, but I'm just trying to help the public out there understand why we do these things. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor, through your worship. Part of that answer is probably above my pay grade, so I'm going to defer to Mr. Smith. But with regard to grant opportunities, and specifically this one, active transportation, obviously active transportation has been identified by the city as a priority, and we did complete an active transportation plan recently. These particular trails identified in this grant are included in the active transportation plan, and as well as other grants that we've put in for West Merritt, for Diamond Vale, and others, Boat Street Phase 2, of course. These are all identified active transportation routes within our master plan that's been adopted by council. So why are we applying for grants for these particular projects? Because it's part of a bigger plan that has been, of course, approved by council and had a lot of input as well from the public. With regard to grants specifically, grants are a great way for the city to obtain funds to fund projects. And certain grants have restrictions around what you can apply for. This one is specifically for active transportation. So can we apply for a sewer upgrade or a road replacement or something? Not in this case, right? This is for active transportation, and so that's what we're allowed to apply for this grant. But various grants come up for various opportunities. So I guess that's about all I can say on that, and I'm going to pass it to the gentleman next to me if he wants to add anything further.
Gentleman with the higher pay grade. Mr. Smith?
I don't like that introduction. Let's come up with a better one. So I think Don was very articulate in how he suggested this, and I wanted to emphasize for the public and anybody that may be listening what the city's current approach is to grants. And it is literally, if the grant has any size, we are applying for it, whatever the classification is. In this case, active transportation, we are working very hard to have shelf-ready projects to apply for those grants so that we can use the taxpayer dollars to better our community in the most efficient way possible, with the least amount of burden on our taxpayers. And so you'll also note that earlier this year, the lead time on the infrastructure grants is often much higher, but the largest grant, I think, to my knowledge, the city's ever applied for in a $7.5 million application through a federal infrastructure grant for the Boat Street Phase 2 project, which is all about road improvement and infrastructure. So we are absolutely focused. We're hitting on every opportunity to improve what I think you'd consider road and other traditional infrastructure, but where the province has a strong bet, particularly coming out of COVID right now for active transportation. We're also going to take advantage of that at every opportunity too. So this really comes down to what the opportunities are and swinging at all of them.
Perfect. Good answer. Thank you very much for that.
Councillor Luck. Councillor Fair.
Thank you. I just wanted to express gratitude to staff for going for the grants that they do, and they have been, and I think that in part is an answer to some who may question why we're doing stuff like this. It's because in the past, perhaps, we weren't as energetic in applying for such funds that are available, so this is how it's happening. Chipping in our share as a municipality is, I think, fair, and that's why the province sets grants up such as this, in which we contribute a proportional amount. But yeah, I think overall that's just the way the system is meant to work, and I'm happy to see that we're pursuing it.
Councillor White.
I think one of the big things that sort of going to what Councillor Luck said is that people don't understand that when we get a grant, it's for a specific thing. And so if if there's something else like potholes, they're going, well, why are you fixing that when we need to fix potholes? And try to explain that the grants are for a specific project. If we don't use them for that project, we don't get the money. That's simple. So, and even as much as sometimes you can explain it over and over, some of them aren't sure about it.
And I've heard our Public Works superintendent tell me that if there are potholes, he will fill them. It's the entire roadway that is the big cost.
Yep.
And we do want all of it. We just need to do it according to the grants we get. So we have a recommendation on the table that council direct, you put all three of these into one, that council direct staff to apply for the for the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant for the Rotary and Central Park Trail Improvements and Connection Project, and the council direct staff to oversee the project management and the management of funds that are awarded, and that council supports the project and commits to any associated ineligible costs and cost overruns. Charlie?
Second.
And fair? And does anyone want to speak to this? All in favor? Opposed? None carried. And brings us to 8.3, 2021 Pickleball Lease Agreement. And this is Mr. McEwen. He has waited for all this time just to be able to speak.
Always at the end.
I brought it for security, but
We're not sure how that happened.
yeah, thanks. So I'm here to speak about the 2021 Pickleball Lease Agreement, and I can talk about a bit of an executive summary with the dissolving of the lawn bowling executive and limited play over the past few years. This was a largely underutilized property. It's been spoke of for a few years to make better use of it. The TNRD has given the city a $130,000 donation towards the construction of 4 pickleball courts at this location, making it a shared use recreation facility. This agreement creates the opportunity to have a nonprofit club care for and utilize the building while providing hours of public use for both activities. Background: last year, the remaining members, I spoke to the remaining members of the lawn bowling club, and they informed me that due to dwindling numbers and COVID didn't help at all, and there was very much so limited play and no desire to continue on with purchasing insurance and being part of the lawn bowling association. This group we care for and kept the building in great shape. Phenomenal group, even to this day. They're walking by and caring for that property. Around that same time, the Pickleball Club had secured a commitment from the TNRD for funding, and they were looking for a more permanent outside set of proper asphalt courts with access to a bathroom. Plans are drawn up, and information on the proposed court construction was shared with Merritt Council, who were happy to hear that something productive was occurring with the property. Charlie Anderson took over the RFP, contractor selection, and build project that is currently being constructed with an expected completion date of August of this year. Both the TNRD director and the Merritt Pickleball Club executive have reviewed and verbally agreed to the terms outlined in this proposed agreement, and listed some options here, and have also listed the financial risk implications, being that the financial benefit of agreeing to this agreement is that the Merritt Pickleball Club is responsible for utility bills and the general upkeep of the building. This lease also gives the Merritt Pickleball Club the option to sublease out the facility with city approval for meetings or other approved income-generating rentals, which allow them to build their building maintenance budget to cover costs, repairs, and replacements of room material items. And also, when the TNRD agreed to fund $130,000 towards the creation of the asphalt pickleball courts, it was with the understanding that the Merritt Pickleball Club would have the option of securing the facility for use under a city lease agreement.
Any questions for Mr. McEwen? Well, okay. Then I need a, thank you, I need a Mover that council direct staff to enter into the proposed Merritt Pickleball lease agreement.
So moved.
Second.
White and Christopherson. And any debate? Councillor Richard.
I just had a question on the lease agreement because I just noticed this typo here in section 3 where it says September the 31st of 2024.
30 days past September.
Yeah, not that I noticed things, but I'm like, this term, it says the lease is from September 1st, 2021 for 3 years until September the 31st of 2024. So is it exactly 3 years or is it going to be 37 months going to the end of September? Just curious. Not to be a pain in the butt, but I like my numbers.
What a way to drag out a
Busted.
spelling error or a typo error.
I'm just curious if it was.
Mr. McEwen, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years? Okay.
Thanks. Nice
I
catch.
just wanted you to know that I actually read the documents that you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Fair.
Thank you. And again, I seem to be wanting to express gratitude a lot, but to the lawn bowling executive and the care that they've given to that area over the however long it's been there, I just wanted to do my part to say thank you to them for handing it off now, or at least part of it, to a new and upcoming activity that will help our community lose some of the comments that I've heard, especially in the run-up to the election. I think that there's not enough to do in Merritt, so it's great to see new things that are that people enjoy being added.
Councillor Luck.
So section 5 here, the rent is $1 per year. $1 per year. We have another large property in this city that we're leasing for $1 a year, and I think previous council wishes they could relook at that again. Different circumstances in that property and that establishment over there. This is a group that allows people to come and go on the pickleball courts. There's no charges, there's no executive, all those kind of things that are going on there, that profit being generated, anything like that, because I would be a little bit chagrined if we're charging $1 a year for a property and a group goes in and tries to make a profit on a land they're leasing from the city for $1.
That was a question, right?
Yes. Yeah. Questions. Convoluted way of getting to you. Sorry, Scott.
That's all right. No, great comment. Thank you for the question. In this case, it is my hope that this pickleball club will indeed take the opportunity to sublease out, approach myself for approval to sublease it out to in the past Ladies Auxiliary, which has got it for free. They've given them a venue to have their annual general meetings. It is a small facility. However, it has been in the past a facility that has been for a minor fee rented out, which assisted with that club being able to do upkeep and replace light bulbs, and they're responsible for replacement of items, the maintenance and the upkeep of it. And so, yeah, it is, there's just so many things with this association, lots of talk and lots of possible avenues that they can maybe take, and with hopes that they will, all the way from bringing high school kids in, elementary school kids in, and mentoring and plant the seed early for them. So in regards to money, bit of a different situation for sure, but yeah, there will be, and it is encouraged that they do build their bank account up to be able to take care of maintenance items and possible net replacement down the road, that sort of things.
Okay, good, thanks.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a question we were actually in debate, so I apologize for that from there.
Okay, we got it. Well, I just want to give thanks to both electoral area directors of TNRD, Herb Graham and David Laird, both of them right directly around our city, and they have found funding to be able to support that. And I have to say, when David Laird was mayor, the lawn bowling building and grounds were built during his time. And I watched him struggle with this decision to turn it over to pickleballers because it was his legacy. And I have to give him credit for saying times have changed, and thank you, David, for enabling this to go ahead. So without him, we wouldn't have this. Without him and her. So that's Miss Councillor Etchart.
I was just wondering if currently the building had been rented out to different groups very often, and if it was often enough that it will help the society cover the maintenance. That's probably a question you don't have.
No, I can speak to that. Thank you, Councillor Dressler, through your worship. Yes, in the past, this past year was the exception.
Yeah.
But before that, the pickleball club, or pardon me, the lawn bowling club, was successful in renting it out and generating some funds to be able to take care of the utilities and the maintenance of it.
Okay. Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no more, I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Do we have a mover and a seconder on this?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay.
Yep.
Again, I'm looking at the wrong. Yes, okay, thank you. That was carried unanimously. So on to 8.4, BCPNP participation for the City of Merritt. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the BCPNP program itself, but I'm happy to ask any questions that Council does have. You're well familiar that we've been participating in the pilot program for the last 2 years. And as far as kind of inquiries, applications received, considered, referrals made, by most metrics, Merritt is one of the most successful communities in that program. We generated a lot of activity. And I think that there are a lot of positive things to be said about the program. I also think that there are some challenges, and that primary challenge is that it is extremely time intensive for the municipality or whoever the organization is that is running that particular program. You guys will recall that at a previous meeting earlier this year, Council had directed that we change the primary contact organization to Community Futures, who was kind of happy to take the lead role in administering this program. But some changes at Community Futures have made it so that that's no longer the case. I have spoken with the Community Futures Board Chair, and in addition to not being interested in taking lead on the program, as it stands right now, they wouldn't even be able to really participate in the program. So it's more than just not being able to be lead right now. And so given the circumstances, given the amount of work that goes into what, to date, I don't want to minimize the success, and we're very happy for the entrepreneur that we have in town, for the other that has received a successful recommendation so far, and for those that may receive it that are still going through the recommendation process with the province. So it's wholly possible that we'll continue to receive benefits from this program into the future. But at this time, staff is recommending that we not continue with the second phase of the program. Should Council decide to go another way with this, one of the main things that you had concerns with last time was how narrowly constrained the target sectors were. Province heard that from you, but also from many other communities, the frustration that folks had with that. And so they have made changes to the program to allow for much more broad sector involvement, which could be a positive thing. But I will say that I also believe that that is going to make this a larger program with more inquiries as opposed to the other way around. And so I think that Council will need to carefully weigh what it considers to be the benefits of that program. And if it was the case that Council recommended proceeding, I think that staff would probably be making some recommendations as to what could be done to streamline. So with that, I will leave it in your court and take any questions.
Councillor Luck.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's very sad to see this program go because it did help some people, and I know there were some people, candidates in the pipeline that were, looking at Merritt. I think it was helping us, but I understand the constraints and with community futures and with staff time here and everything. It's very sad that we have to let go of the program. Maybe sometime in the future we can resurrect it. I think it's great for the community. There is one candidate that was in the pipeline here, especially has gone a long way, is Wasim. You're aware that we're not dropping him. Is he being taken care of, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I do want to be really clear, and it's in the last paragraph before the program changes there, but that any referrals that the city has already made will continue to go through the process, and the city will continue to support anybody that's gone through. So where that referral has been made, those will continue to go through. What this would be doing is us saying that we're not going to continue to take applications or process referrals.
Good. Thank you very much for that. He's a good guy. It'd be nice to see him land his feet here and there for sure.
Done a lot of work in the community.
He has done a lot of work. Yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Fair.
So I do see that the program has had and has a lot of potential for creating new businesses and doing good for the community, as well as the time that it takes to process all of these applications. So I guess my question is, if we do discontinue participation, how hard or when or how do you think we could end up re-entering into it at some point? Like, how do you see that happening?
Yeah,
if it could.
Speaking very candidly, in the interim, I feel that the time could be allocated to perhaps more traditional business attraction efforts. And I think that in terms of, if the primary goal is to bring business into the community, I think that those same hours would find more success through, again, more traditional business attraction attempts. If the goal here is promoting a diverse community, supporting the immigration program, because I think that there are some benefits with that as well, then it's something that it could be considered now if council wanted it, or we could look at rejoining in the future. I will be really honest, I'm not 100% clear as to if we don't join now, are we out for the rest of this period? What does the joining process look like? But if that is something that council would like us to consider at a future time, we're happy to open that discussion up to see how we could get back into to the process. The other thing that I would say, or that I intended to say, because I just received notice that the parent program for the DCP&P, which is another one that I thought that we might be able to utilize more. It has higher investment requirements and some other things, but that has temporarily been suspended, is what I understand. So that isn't something that's going to be running right now, but the BCP&P pilot will continue to run. So in terms of when or how we would go about rejoining, we would really take direction from council, and we would likely need to make recommendations to be realistic about the time requirements as to whether that's an additional body partnering with another organization, really limiting the amount of processing time by how we approach applications. We would need to have discussions as a team, and if that were the direction you wanted to go.
Thank you.
Councillor Richard.
I guess my question would be is, if you dissolve your membership, then trying to get back in likely is quite difficult, because when Merritt was investigating an, what do they call that, an MRDTA, local tax for MRDTs, right? And then that lost momentum. Trying to get that started back up is quite difficult on the provincial level. So I guess my concern would be is if you drop out, likely you're not going back in, because oftentimes it's once you're out, you're out. Well, without great difficulty of trying to get back in would be my concern. And we can attract business maybe within Canada, but if we're trying to attract foreign investment, wouldn't we maybe need that assistance from the government? I mean, really?
Yeah.
On a broad level, if you're really trying to attract investment to the community, I think that you probably need as much assistance as you can So I mean, in a way, it seems easy to dissolve everything, but at the same time, trying to get back in, I think would be an immense challenge.
What I can say is if the province chooses to continue the program after 2024, which is when the second round is scheduled to end, I think that would be the most natural re-entry point. Whether if we wanted to get in before that, again, I'm not crystal clear right now on what the requirements for joining in midstream, but I don't even know if it's possible, and if it is possible, again, I think that joining midstream would present challenges. I think that that's a fair comment, fair analysis. What I would say in terms of the investment is recognizing that the BCPNP pilot program is generally targeting smaller entrepreneurs for smaller businesses to start with, and so for the size of business that the program is generally looking to attract, you don't necessarily need to be going out to the foreign markets to find individuals who are able to set up businesses in the $150,000 to $200,000 range. If you get into bigger numbers, sometimes it can be harder to find entrepreneurs that are willing to invest that into their businesses. But I do think that it's a little bit more feasible because of the smaller dollar values at play in this particular program. So again, we're not saying that staff won't. We will find a way, if this is something that is important to the council, you would like us to see us continue to support this program. We would just need to make some fairly drastic overhauls to how it's run to be able to make this work, and it is our belief that that time could be allocated to generating business that would probably have more direct impact for taxpayers in other ways.
Fair enough. Thank you for that.
Seeing no comments, I was going to say we need to have a motion. A mover and a seconder, and I'm going to combine these two. That council elect not to continue community participation in the BCPNP program, and council dissolve the city's BCPNP program committee. Good luck and Christopherson. And anyone want to speak to this? Councillor Fair?
I'll just say that I think that the administrative requirements are too onerous as the program exists now, and that, as Mr. Smith said, the opportunity in 2024 to re-enter or hopefully a more streamlined iteration will come out by then, and we can look at it again then. So for the time being, I personally won't be voting to retain it.
And on the backs of what Councillor Fair said, there's also a whole COVID pandemic with the rest of the world and with the Asian community in particular. And I would be reluctant to have somebody come for that. I just have worries on a world scale that we're not ready to open our borders to everybody at this point in time. So I'm quite happy to have this dissolved. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor White?
Oh, I say yes.
Okay. I didn't see your hand up. So that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to notices of motion. Anybody? No? Reports from council? No reports. This gives us a move into closed council.
We go, one thing.
Oh, we do. We have I'm sorry, we have an information. I've actually got it highlighted here.
Can I make a council report? I'll be real quick.
Yes, we'll back this up for one more. Okay, thank you.
On Friday, we have Miss World Tourism coming, so she will be out in the community on Friday to all the number of downtown businesses, and Saturday we'll be meeting with all the action groups like the Snowmobile Club, the Mountain Bike Club, the whole list of them. I will send out the itinerary. We're just confirming a couple other things and I should have it ready tomorrow. So that's that.
Thank you. Now onto the information item, which is I'm going to have staff. You've been waiting all this time and I just would have let it go. Okay, Charlie Henderson from Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is just a simple high-level snapshot of where we're at with the capital program that I'm overseeing this year. You'll notice on the columns that percentage completed. With how I decipher these is I incorporate grant writing, RFP writing, and award of project. So the construction portion of these projects could only simply be 50% of completion. Because we have to do quite a bit of work with grant creation, engineering drawings, there's multiple factors that are into the percentage completed. As we step into the first project is the first overrun of the season. We're looking at the sanitary station that will service Trans Mountain. The reason we're looking at cost overruns is it took us over 5 months to get a detailed quotation from BC Hydro. We used an out-of-date figure. It was short. With that, the other projects will kind of back that project up. The bulk water was under budget, and then we are looking at substantial under budgets with the KVR pedestrian bridge and the Armstrong street design. But this one is looking at a cost overrun of excess of $100,000.
I can just jump in on this one as well, Your Worship. So there is one piece of information, I'm going to ask Charlie to confirm this as well, but with the BC Hydro project in terms of what it was initially perceived to be was a particular type of line that would just feed our parcel, but it was now it's looking like they want I don't have a map up showing the whole upgrade, but a larger line would run through to our parcel that would be capable of serving all of the north parcels at the airport. So what this will do, so we fully acknowledge that this is over budget. We're not trying to minimize that, but this will provide benefits to the developability of all of the parcels on the north side of the runway as well. So while we say that this is over budgeted, there are other benefits that, whether it's the city directly receiving them or other landowners, that hopefully will have more incentive to develop those properties because they are going to be much more easily serviceable for BC Hydro purposes. So
yeah, and just to add on to that, so the reason why we were over budget is because we thought it'd be a single phase power. So this is a 3-phase power to run the station, which is underground as well. So now any 3-phase will be able to service each lot along Airport Road, which is more power, so larger buildings.
Thank you. And I understand this is a report that's going to be coming to us on a regular basis, and Mr.
Correct.
Anderson will be here to report and answer any questions that we may have. So are there any questions for Mr. Henderson?
Okay. So as we're just kind of basically, besides the sanitary station, the bulk water, and the cemetery, we're 2 months into our capital program from when budget was adopted. So with the cemetery expansion, we've met substantial completion for phase 1. You guys are well aware that we will be completing that project as 2 phases next year as well. However, we can move forward with burials. Hydrovac replacement is complete. Some of you have probably seen it around town as well. So that project was a carry forward just due to manufacturing. So that is now complete. Boat Street Phase 2 construction is just sitting at 20% as we're just simply waiting for a grant announcement for that one. Boat Street Phase 2 design has been ongoing for 2 years now. For the grant application, it was simply preliminary design. This is detailed design. So myself and the consultants are putting the bow on that, and once we hear about the grant announcement for the construction, those plans will be ready for construction. So those are IFC drawings. Coldwater Riverworks, engineering is underway. Environmental management plans are currently being completed, and we're going to be looking at construction for 2022. But there's multiple items on the Coldwater Trail which have erosion pieces, and the project has kind of grown as we've undertaken it. Cars have been identified and other items like that. So we're looking for construction in 2022, as well as incorporating First Nations consultation. Time will just take longer to get actual shovels in the ground.
One other piece on that, Your Worship. My apologies. Consider that $200,000 right now as a giant asterisk, because it's what it was with the original scope, and as this scope changes, we will firm this up for next year as to what we believe the actual cost will be for the full scope of what that project may look like. So I just don't want you counting on that $200,000 numbers. It will change by the time we get to next year's budget.
The 200 will pretty well cover the engineering cost, and then we'll roll out the construction cost. So we will have shelf-ready projects for any grant applications that do arise. KVR pedestrian bridge, contract was signed this morning. They're looking at mobilization of Thursday, and then we are completing this work during the fish window. So that is well under budget as well, but we'll talk about those figures at a later time. Survey equipment, the RFP is live right now with that closing on July 30th. This will allow myself and our in-house Eng Tech to go out and complete our survey work that goes along with multiple other projects. The wastewater treatment plant master plan, we're currently waiting on another grant announcement for that one. And hopefully we can have this one completed by February if we are successful. Hydrant replacement and valve replacement are waiting on the Boat Street construction grant, as we don't want to duplicate work at this current time, as we'll be changing out multiple valves and multiple hydrants with Boat Street Phase 2. If we are unsuccessful, then we'll complete other water main valve replacements and hydrants throughout the city as well. Our RFB crosswalks is below budget as well. They have arrived. They are quite tech savvy and take us a little bit to put them together. So we're looking at installation of those by the end of September. Security cameras, I have not started that project yet, but that will be on my list for about September. The dump truck RFP we're currently working on. Manufacturing is a challenge. Ford has said no deliveries for 2022, but we are looking to international, which we normally purchase international trucks. So hopefully, once our RFP specs are complete, we'll see this one as a carry forward for delivery, just as we saw with the hydrovac as well. UVT meters, what a UVT meter is it measures the UVTs through our UV system at all of our pump houses for treatment on our water. This is Interior Health mandated that we measure what those metrics are. So this RFP should be going live hopefully at the end of this week. The SCADA computer is what gives us our alarms at the wastewater treatment plant, and then does after hours call-outs. That computer is complete and installed and programmed as well. Wastewater treatment plant platforms, these are just safety platforms around the wastewater treatment plant. It's a small value and we haven't started it yet. We'll look for completion of that around September as well. Flood restoration, we'll be just working on engineering and environmental management plans for 2021 and looking for construction in 2022. What the province and DFO really wants to see is, rather than piecemealing out our projects, is that we have a full plan that incorporates the Coldwater and the Nicola with habitat, a bank of habitat. So if that we're going to put rock in a river to stabilize erosion, that we'll be planting X amount of trees in a different location. Bridge repairs is complete. This is for the Middlesboro Bridge Center Pier. It had a slight lean to it. We've had a structural engineer sign off on that, so that is safe. That project is complete. Armstrong Street civil design has closed. Evaluation was completed this morning. We will be looking to award that project this week as well. The downtown washrooms, we had an unsuccessful grant application, so that project will be put in our bank, so to speak, for the time being, in case we want to revisit it at a later date. The West Merritt
one comment on that one as well is the Economic Development Committee for the rest of council, so that they're aware, is one of the subgroups of that committee has been working hard on identifying potential options for downtown washrooms, and so that will be coming forward to council in the near future.
The West Merritt Active Transportation Path, we are just simply waiting on another grant for that as well. So you can see there's quite some large figures throughout this spreadsheet. If we're successful for all the grants, we will be quite busy for the next year and a half or so. Cleasby Street connection, that has been approached. We'll have a direct award to an engineering firm by the end of this week. Pickleball courts is underway. We're looking at 70% completion there, with a total completion of August 7th as per their contract. Water utility master plan update. We are currently ongoing, and that is a completion of this December. That will add the addition of alternate sources for pumps to our master plan, and then we can use those recommendations for other projects. Water metering planning. We're currently waiting for a proposal to be submitted back to us from an engineering firm, which will roll out the engineering portion and plan of this, not the implementation, simply what can we do and how to do it. Fire hall expansion is complete, still a couple of deficiencies that we're working through. That one was under budget, and the bulk water station is complete as well.
Wow, thank you. Any questions on the report? Councillor White.
Where is Cleansby Street and what's going on there?
So right, Wilshena and Coldwater would be that connection at Cleasby where there is no connection. There's an old kind of railway bed and Fairleigh Park there.
Okay.
Yeah, so then that will help with the fire halls, that they could, any emergency services can make it through. It's a small section. There.
It is one of the I'm going to say it's one of the few projects that we actually have DCC funding set aside for. Our DCC bylaw is all over the map, but this is one of the ones that does need to happen, and there is funding. It won't pay for the whole cost of the project, but partial project costs are covered by the DCC bylaw. So, yeah, DCC.
Nice. Councillor Fair.
Thank you. Regarding the flood restoration, so my understanding is that we've kind of had plans that were sort of thwarted because there were requirements in the rivers that, I don't know, were either changed or just didn't look like what they looked like when we got to them. That's kind of what I understood. So I guess my question is, how is it looking now for us to achieve that restoration process as far as a timeline?
So it was a faulty design. We had gone back and forth with that engineering firm. The province wanted to see soft armoring. So what that was is The riprap that you currently see on top of that was vegetation and topsoil. By the time the work was completed, freshet came, took all the soft armoring downstream. And that is what we were left with, was basically the hard armoring. So what DFO has come back to us is that there could be possible fish entrapment, and we need to rectify that situation.
Okay. So I guess what I'm really asking is, can we get it done before next freshet?
No.
Okay.
Engineering will be completed this year, and then we'll kind of revisit the roundtable of how to proceed through grant funding or through a budgeted project.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just want to get a better understanding of that, because it's something that's, you know, hard to comprehend, I think, for the general public and for myself. It's just, you know, all these delays and something that it seems like it should be relatively easy to do, but I understand that's because of DFO.
What we'll really run into is we'll have to complete First Nations consultation.
Yeah.
That's why you'll see these projects at 50%, and we haven't even broke ground yet, is because of the time it takes to get permitting through DFO, through the province, completing the engineering, writing the RFP, awarding the project. There's so much moving parts behind the scenes before we can actually, you know, put a piece of equipment or a shovel on site.
Right, good. Okay, thank you.
And that is one of the reasons that you have that temporary structure. I don't even know what it's called. On the one side of the river.
The blocks.
The temporary black fencing.
Yeah.
It's temporary because you still have to go back in again.
That's right, so that's still fencing, that's been up there, that's correct.
Gosh, it took me a long time to get that out. I am tired. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Henderson? Thank you very much.
Well,
You're doing a great job.
Thank you for this, yeah.
You know, can I make one comment on this? Can we have that report set up so that the projects come out as last year, this year, this year, this year, next year, in 3 different categories, so that we can look and see when you say you're on budget, off budget, it'll make sense as to whether it's a project being taken over 2 years and which 2 years. Does that make sense with what I just asked?
Yeah, I think you just want to see the carryovers and when these projects started and when they're going to complete. Some of them go 3 years.
Yeah.
Very simple to remember. If it says flooding or river works, that's a 2-year project. If it has a truck behind it, that's a 2-year project.
Mr. Smith.
Just to make sure that I understand, because I think it's a fantastic point, and the fire hall is a good example in that we're under budget for what we had said we were going to do with the revised numbers for this particular round of budget, but for what was originally proposed, we're actually higher than what that amount is, and of course we brought that through to council and let you know that as well. But I think that's what you're wanting to see is kind of what
projects
the original
over a 2-year
project.
period, segregated, just together.
Yeah, sure. And also to confirm in terms of expectations moving forward, if we just attach this as an information item and then you ask questions instead of having it where it's a formal go through each project, council's comfortable with that?
Yep. Okay. Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you.
Now we can move into the closed session. I need a mover that the meeting be closed to the press and public pursuant to Community Charter Section 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. Second. Butcher and White. And all in favor? Carried. And before we go into the item, I'd like to